Cigars with the scent of potpourri, films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly podcast that reviews one or two new release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. You can find more of our work, including my written reviews, full episode show notes, and the complete backlog of our episodes at obsessiveviewer.com. You can also write into the show by emailing me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. And if you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where you can get access to content at any of our tier levels on a recurring monthly subscription basis, or you can buy individual collections a la carte in the Patreon shop section. Recently on Patreon, I released a big trauma dump oversharing episode about me talking about my mother passing away last month. So that's on there for all eternity. And I also have an immediate reaction to A Real Pain, an immediate reaction to Re-Entry, and we just recorded a B-roll episode just talking about work and life, and I think we talked about movies a little bit. Also, I talked about my teeth. So if any of those strike your fancy, that's at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. And also I want to mention that I was a guest on Kim C's Patreon. The Year of Underrated Stephen King, hosted by Kim C. I was on her Patreon, which is called The Dance Macabre with Kim C. We talked about You Like It Darker by Stephen King. That was a blast. Go ahead and find that, and it'll be a link in the show notes as well. And support her on Patreon, because she does really great work over there. Okay. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find me on social media, including Letterboxd, at Obsessive Viewer. And later in the show, we'll be reviewing the latest movie in the VHS found footage franchise, VHS Beyond, which is currently streaming on Shudder. But before that, we're going to go over some movie news and then review Todd Phillips' follow-up to Joker, Folie, in this week's feature review. And joining me tonight are my friends and IFJ colleagues, Mitch Ringenberg, Mitch Ringenberg, whose work can be found on MidwestFilmJournal.com, and Brent Leuthold, whose work can be found on AwakeInTheDark.com. I don't have a goofy intro for this, so welcome back to the show, guys. How's it going?
Hey.
Good to be with you, Do.
Yes. Good to be with you guys, too. Did you say do?
Yeah, like Folie, I do.
Nice. Good to have you guys on. And recently, as I usually do, I'm going to go ahead and mention titles of things that you have reviewed, and then we can kind of talk about that if you want. But Brent, recently, today, you posted a review of Woman of the Hour, which is hitting Netflix this week. And then I believe as part of Midwest Film Journal's No Sleep October, you did a review of The Devil's Backbone. And you also reviewed Joker, Folie, and My Old Ass. I hope it got a big score.
A+ all around.
Nice. There we go.
Now the movie was all right, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And Mitch, recently you reviewed Terrifier 3, Salem's Lot, which I still need to see, and The Substance and Rebel Ridge. So with that in mind, how has the film criticism world been to you guys these last few weeks or months or however long?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. I thought, honestly, Matt, you really don't need to see Salem's Lot. It's pretty bad. But the Terrifier 3, had a great time. Mm-hmm. Always love a good new slasher movie. And this year we actually were lucky enough to get two excellent slasher movies, in my opinion, with In a Violent Nature and yes. Terrifier 3. So 2024 shaping up to be a really solid year for movies.
Nice. Brent, anything, do you want to give us a sneak peek of Woman of the Hour? What's your thought of it?
I really liked it as Anna Kendrick's directorial debut. She is in it as well. And in 1978 on the show The Dating Game, there was a guy who was bachelor number 3, and he won a date with the person, and it turned out he was a serial killer who had murdered like it's weird because they say the range can be anywhere from like 5 people to like 130.
Oh my
which
God.
I don't understand how serial killer stuff works.
Yeah.
But like that seems like a humongous range.
Mhm.
But there's basically, I guess, 5 people that they know that he killed. I guess they had like evidence, and of course he was sentenced to, you know, life, and he died in 2021. But the movie, is basically about the woman who, you know, kind of went on a date with him. I think there's probably some artistic liberties with certain things. Like there's someone in the audience who recognizes him, and like I don't think it happened quite like that, but it sort of zips back and forth through time between like that fateful taping of that episode and this guy Rodney Alcala murdering these young women. So it's definitely some like kind of Zodiac vibes to it, but definitely has just a really kind of really well rendered kind of like commentary on like just like misogyny and like sexism. And it's at the backdrop of this show that's innocuous. Like the dating game is like, it's an innocuous show, but it's also like, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's very much like a women are prizes to be won, you know, sort of thing. So it's an interesting kind of way into this story. So I really dug it, and interested to see what she'll do next in the director's chair. I will say one thing: you screwed up, Matt. I'm saying it now. Okay, early on. No, I did indeed write about Devil's Backbone, but that was for a Guillermo del Toro.
Yes, okay,
respective Gimme Toro. However, I am doing a No Sleep October entry that I believe is coming out in a couple days. I think by the time this episode's out, it'll be out. So I hope it's okay saying what it is. I did Possession, the 1981 movie that I had not seen before, and it was challenging. I signed up for it, not having seen it, and sometimes I'll do that. And you know, that was just one that has really kind of garnered a reputation over the years. And so I was just like, just check it out and write about it. How hard could it be?
Yeah. Little did you realize you were probably going to be watching one of the most impenetrable horror movies.
Exactly. Exactly. So if you want to watch my brain stew, try to make sense of Possession, that'll be out in a couple days when I'm recording this. Probably by the time everyone's listening, it should be out on Midwest Film Journal.
Nice.
Also
awesome.
A wildly unpleasant one.
I have never seen it, but I feel like I'm aware of certain elements of it. So yeah, I'll have to check it out and read your work.
You get to see Sam Neill giving a performance that you've never seen Sam Neill giving.
Okay.
Patently unchill.
Unreal. And he claims to date that it's his favorite movie he's ever done.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. That's awesome. Mitch, with Terrifier 3, did you go viral or anything with any reactions to it? Because
I didn't go kind of mini viral like I did last time. I still kind of can't believe that happened because I didn't tag anyone in that post or anything. That tweet I did, for listeners who are unaware, my Twitter, which I really don't take seriously or ever put any effort into, I had written something along the lines of like Terrifier 2. I had seen a screener, so I saw it before the movie came out. And I said Terrifier 2, the only movie in my lifetime where I had read reports of people fainting or vomiting in the theater and thought to myself, yeah, I could see that. Because so often the pre-release hype for these types of movies is just overblown as hell.
Yeah.
You're like, okay. But you know what? Terrifier 2 and Terrifier 3 have some genuinely upsetting things. And sure enough, when that went on Twitter, like 5 minutes after I posted it, I was getting all these notifications. It was like, Damien Leone, the director, shared your tweet. Bloody disgusting. Shared your tweet. Blah, blah. It got mentioned in like AV Club articles and all this crazy stuff.
That's wild.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really wild. I didn't realize Twitter notifies you when something you have tweeted gets published somewhere.
Like embedded somewhere?
Yeah, it's like the Guardian and like AV Club used my tweet.
Wow.
Among some others. But all of the comments, I'm quoting here, no, not my own words, were calling me a pussy and a little baby bitch, or finding the movie to be.
I want Art to
gross.
kill you next.
That's amazing.
I never said my own
Right.
thought on the movie.
Right.
I just said I could see people
Right.
being upset. I didn't actually.
You're validating the experiences of others.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, but that didn't matter. That didn't matter.
That's amazing.
But you know what? So yeah, no, I did not attempt to go mini viral again with Terrifier 3. Although I will say that have you guys seen Terrifier 2?
I have not. I saw the first one.
I saw the first one as well. We watched the first 10 minutes of the second one, and I think honestly Aubrey looked at the runtime and she was like, we don't have time for this. Why is this movie 2.5 hours?
Every Terrifier is better than the last. So the first one's not very good, but it has some pretty remarkable practical effects for being made for no money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
The second one is way too long, but has some really incredible sequences. And then the third one, I think, is the first of the three to really nail the formula. It feels like as these movies are going, the writer-director, and he does everything, edits. I know at least for a couple of movies, he actually did the practical effects himself.
Oh, wow.
So he's really talented. It feels like he's kind of learning in real time as these movies go on, and
That's
then
awesome.
the third one, he's like, okay, I know, it looks the best of the three. It has a $2 million budget, which compared to the first one, which had a $30,000 budget, this is, way better. It looks great. It has that awesome 70s, Black Christmas aesthetic, that kind of cozy film grain. It's awesome. So I would really recommend it. And the fact that it came in number one at the box office over the weekend, I feel like it's
amazing.
It's why, even if you don't like the movie, because in some ways it is pretty morally reprehensible.
Sure. Wait, hang on. Are we talking about Terrifier 3, or are we in the Joker 2 review now?
Right.
Dominating box office.
Different evil clown movie.
Yes.
But yes. The fact that's something so I feel niche and kind of just something so niche and just kind of mean and nasty, the Terrifier movies came in at number one in the box office. I just feel like that's insane. It does feel like we're kind of in an exciting time for horror movies, I feel like.
Yeah. On Threads, David Howard Thornton threaded. He posted on Threads, my mind is blown. Never in my life would I have imagined my film would beat out a film about my favorite villain, the Joker, at the box office, let alone be the number one film in America. Thank you all that came out to support our little indie film that could. You made history this weekend. And I thought that was very sweet. And then someone replied with, who are you and what film?
Yeah, well, jokes on that commenter.
Yes.
I was talking to a fellow, not to go on about this too long, but I was talking to a fellow IFJA member, Andy Carr, who I saw the movie with.
Nice.
While everybody else was at a real pain at the Heartland Film Festival. But
different kinds of art films, as we talked about.
Yeah, they're comparable. But I was talking to Andy about this, and I was like, I don't know if there's another franchise, and I mentioned this in my review, that's kind of had this weird upward trajectory like the Terrifier movies have. There's larger scale versions of that. I think you could maybe argue John Wick or the Fast and Furious films.
Sure.
At times have kind of had this one where it's the fifth movie is the biggest one yet. And it, Fast 5 was kind of the biggest one and the highest grossing one yet, when that came out, it's this kind of leap up in quality. But I don't know if there's one where it's the first film was literally a micro budget movie, on Tubi,
Oh, yeah.
and then the third one is opening up number one at the box office. it's kind of awesome. It's like a true grassroots almost effort.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, wasn't that actor and the actor with three names that you mentioned on Threads, wasn't he, some of his like earliest jobs, he was like in some fan made like version where he's the Joker or something like that?
I just learned that.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
David Howard Thornton. I guess you can find clips of it on YouTube. David Howard Thornton played the Joker in like a Nightwing fan film.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'd like to see those clips. I kind of saw he was trying to drop those little hints in interviews, like, please hire me, big studio.
Yeah,
like,
sure. I mean,
I would love to play the Joker. That's one of my favorite roles.
That's the one thing about, like, I mean, yeah, Terrifier, because the first one does not look good. And I mean, I know.
No, it looks like shit.
It looks bad. Like, and I mean, I know it's like really low budget and everything, but like the one thing I think that even comes through definitely in the first movie, which I think overall, like I definitely like aspects of it enough where I'd want to see like 2 and 3, is that performance. I mean, it's insane. Like Art the Clown is just like, that is like already, I think, even just in that first movie, it's like, that is creepy as hell. And like,
Yes.
I would definitely, I would definitely watch more of him.
It's almost like, again, shout out to my review. I said something along these lines, which is like, it's almost like Jim Carrey meets Michael Myers,
Oh, yeah.
He's mugging, right? Like he's a silent killer, like a Jason or a Michael Myers, but he's obviously like doing this crazy over the top comedic mugging like the whole time. So he still has a lot of personality, and like this newest one is his best performance yet, and he's given a lot to do.
Nice.
There's no spoilers, but there's a scene where he meets like a department store Santa at a bar. And
Okay.
Howard is there too, and it's like one of the funniest scenes of the year, and of course also it's in a very horrifying way. But
well, actually,
yeah, naturally.
Yeah.
Would definitely recommend checking it out, and even honestly, it's a great one to see in theaters if you can get a screening with like a rowdy crowd. It's a good one for that.
Nice. Speaking of screenings, and hopefully not rowdy crowds, but active crowds, we talked about it, or it was alluded to a little bit ago here on the show, that currently right now here in Indianapolis, Heartland Film Festival is going on. The last episode I did was an extended interview with a couple of filmmakers from the movie Re-Entry, which is at Heartland right now. But before we get to like news, before the reviews and the reviews themselves and everything, I do want to just highlight that Heartland Film Festival is going on. This episode is hopefully going to go out tomorrow, actually, instead of Thursday, because I'm trying to play catch up with my goals as to like where I want to be with the podcast at this point in the year. So as of the release of this episode, I want to just touch on a few special screenings that Heartland is having. At the Can Theater, Tuesday, October 15th at 7 p.m., there is a VHS screening of the movie Dirty Laundry, which is it's a film directed by Rocky Walls, who he's like behind, like he runs the HooDocs streaming service with like Hoosier, Indiana-based documentary features, I believe, and short films as well. But Dirty Laundry is his narrative directorial debut, I believe, and it's had its world premiere yesterday, as of this recording, and they're having a special VHS screening of it because it's set in 1997. It's two friends who are doing laundry at a laundromat, and they have this magic power thrust upon them where they can't lie to each other throughout the night. So truths come out, and their friendship is tested. And at the Can they're having a special VHS screening of it, which is really interesting. So that's October 15th at 7 p.m. at the Can. And then also tonight, when you're listening to this, October 15th at Newfields is the special presentation screening of Night Bitch, which I will be in attendance at. Excited for that. And then on Wednesday, the 16th, they're having a centerpiece screening of Small Things Like These, starring Cillian Murphy. That's going to be at the Toby Theater on the 16th at 6:30. I will be there too, hopefully. And then we also have on Sunday, the 20th at 3 p.m., they have a spotlight screening of September 5th at the Toby, which I don't know much about that, but I'm going to it, so it'll be cool. And then finally, the closing night film on Sunday, October 20th is Emilia Perez, which is going to be hitting Netflix at some point in the future. But that's the closing night film of Heartland Film Festival. That's going to be October 20th at the Toby Theater at Newfields at 6 p.m. I will be there as well. So that's some of the stuff that's coming to Heartland this week. Have you guys been able to watch any Heartland movies? And if so, anything jump out, or am I putting you on the spot?
I have not yet seen anything for Heartland, which I'm very sad. I think this might be the first year where I might not end up seeing anything. We'll see.
Oh, wow.
A Real Pain I was planning on seeing, but of course, Terrifier 3 was calling my name.
Aforementioned.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we'll see. I'm gonna try to make it to something. I need to really look at the calendar. I've just been out of town and just like have had a million things going on that I'm like, I feel like just now I have the bandwidth to kind of see if I can maybe snag a last minute like press ticket to something.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And Brent, now that Mitch has gotten it out of the way where he hasn't seen anything with Heartland, Brent, bring us home. What all have you been able to watch?
The last time I was at Heartland was 2019, and I think A Beautiful Day in... Wait, what's it? I always
A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood?
Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is the narrative one, right? Not the doc. Won't You Be My Neighbor is the documentary. Okay. So Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, I think, was the opening night film or closing.
That
one of those two
sounds right.
Yeah. Aubrey and I drove down from Fort Wayne to Indianapolis to see that, and that was pretty cool. Actually, that was a really packed screening, and that was before COVID, and people were totally fine with packed theaters, and it was it's a cool thing. So other than that, I have not been back to Heartland, not because I don't enjoy it, not because it's not a wonderful festival. It's just a drive for me, and honestly, it's this time of year too where it's like A Real Pain is a great example. Like, that's a movie I'm very interested in, very curious to see, but like we'll get end of year screenings for that, like probably in or screeners or discs or something like in a month. So like that'll probably be in the end of year sort of crush. So it's always kind of a tricky thing timing wise, but it sounds like a great festival. I mean, as far as I've seen, and it sounds like they had a good lineup again this year. And I know that Jesse Eisenberg has that like Indiana connection with like Bloomington and stuff.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of cool.
He lived in Bloomington for a while. I was there. And
I
think I said in our chat that I was like, so many people I knew would be like, I saw Jesse Eisenberg at Kroger today. I'd be like, what? I never saw him once. He used to do stand-up sets too.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't know, like frequently, but I know he did. I had the opportunity to go to one and I declined, but kind of wish I did. That sounds interesting in retrospect. But yes, he did a lot of work with a women's shelter in Bloomington.
Oh, wow.
I don't want to speak out of turn here about Jesse Eisenberg. This is just what I gather. I know he did a lot of work with a women's shelter in Bloomington, and I believe he was dating somebody who was getting a PhD or a graduate degree or something from IU. So he spent a lot of time there.
Okay, interesting.
Again, not 100% sure of those facts, but that was what was conveyed to me.
I think that's right, because I heard him the first time I heard him talking about the Bloomington thing was in connection with the previous movie he directed, When You Finish Saving the World, which it's funny you mentioned the women's shelter thing. Julianne Moore's character in that movie works at a women's shelter, so like he probably took quite a bit from his time there in Bloomington and put it in that movie. There's also, you mentioned like stand-up gigs. There's kind of an open mic thing that Finn Wolfhard's character kind of like sort of gets enticed by. So that movie was not shot in Bloomington because it was cheaper to shoot it in Canada.
Sure.
But they do make different references to it being at the very least in Indiana. I think they do. There's certain things that they kind of allusions that they drop that it is in Bloomington. So anyway, I did see the trailer for a Real Pain a few times and saw that he has the IU add-on. So that's cool. That I mean, it's a very interesting connection that it's Jesse Eisenberg and IU / Bloomington or whatever. But it's cool. So it's cool that he was. I know virtually did like an intro for it. Since he's filming. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a very random connection, but it's really cool. And also, I just wanted to shout out the name of that shelter is Middleway House on South Washington and Bloomington. So shout out to that place. They do great work.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I don't have any like connection to Jesse Eisenberg like you do, Mitch, or loose connection there. But I will say,
I don't even know if I've been in the same zip code as him.
Well, maybe I should reframe it. I may have you beat there. I do have a little bit of a connection. Back in 1999, he was part of an ensemble on a very short-lived Fox drama called Get Real. And okay. It lasted like 12 episodes, or no, it got a full season, but the last like 3 episodes didn't make it to air. But that was back in like 1999 when I was in like 7th or 8th grade. And, I will say I was a charter member of the online fan club for Get Real, that originated from message board posts that, people like myself, like-minded individuals gathered together to talk about Get Real, which, kind of amazing that drama. I mean, it was a family drama. It was like a pretty much cookie cutter, like late 90s family drama, but a little bit ahead of its time because it did break the fourth wall a little bit here and there. But it had Jesse Eisenberg, Anne Hathaway, and
I'm looking at the poster right now, blowing my mind.
And Eric Christian Olsen.
Eric Christian Olsen from the classic film Dumb and Dumber.
Yes. And I remember like he had tweeted something like this was like several years ago. He had tweeted something like he was doing like an Ask Me Anything or whatever, or doing something on Twitter. It's like, hey, I have some time. I'm answering questions. Like, where do you know me from? And like I tweeted him and was like, hey, I saw you in Get Real. And he's like, wow, that's a blast from the past. And I was like, yeah.
Dang, he responded to you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Yep.
That's dope.
So we're like that. I just did the fingers crossed thing for the
you
video.
Guys got all sorts of pull.
Yeah. Yep. It's hard. It's hard being influencers like we are here.
Yeah, it's tough being such close friends with Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I do what I can.
Yeah. But I will say, I believe several episodes of Get Real are available on YouTube, and I don't know if it holds up, but it was pretty good at the time. But yeah, so that's what's going on here in Indy with Heartland Film Festival. Check it out, heartlandfilm.org, and also check out my interview with the filmmakers behind Re-Entry, which I will recommend, guys. Check out Re-Entry. I really enjoyed it. It is playing virtually throughout the rest of the festival, so check that out. So yeah, before we get to the feature review of Joker Folie, Deux, I do have 2 news items that are a little bit older, but I wanted to kind of get some thoughts going. We don't need to talk too hard about them, we don't need to talk too long about them. But the first one... Can we
talk about them long and hard?
Yes, we can. There is an innuendo that I can make here because this is very much my type of news, I will say. The first one is that The Life of Chuck, Mike Flanagan's adaptation of Stephen King's novella of the same name, it has been purchased by Neon, and they will be releasing it in theaters in the next summer 2025, and they're going to be pushing for it for award season next year. I cannot freaking wait to see this movie. I'm very much excited about it. Before recording, Mitch was talking about how much he hates the Life of Chuck novella and hates me as a person.
I liked it. And you're okay too.
Yeah, thank you. But for me, The Life of Chuck is one of my favorite King novellas. It hit me in just the right space. It's incredible, but I'm very excited to see what Mike Flanagan has done with it. What do you guys make of this news? The Life of Chuck coming out in summer 2025 from Neon.
I feel like it's kind of I'm just disappointed. I mean, it just as a movie that I know is like done and in the can, you know. I'm a little disappointed that we had to wait that long for it.
Me too.
But I guess if they're trying to do an award season push, that makes sense. I do know that it premiered at like Fantastic Fest or Beyond Fest or
I want to say TIFF
or maybe TIFF.
Yeah,
TIFF. I know it premiered somewhere, and so the movie's done. You can read reviews of it online.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just a little bummed. I do think it's cool that Mike Flanagan is kind of trying to take the sort of the Frank Darabont approach of the Stephen King adaptations, trying to do some a little more heartfelt. I think one thing that Mike Flanagan kind of really understood in his adaptation of like Dr. Sleep is that, what makes Stephen King so great, I think, is he's a little bit of a corny dude. And I don't mean in just the weird 1950s slang he kind of drops in the books that nobody ever actually says, but more in the sense that like his stories are really are very heartfelt and often really have these very endearing protagonists who are just kind-hearted people who want to be good. And he balances that obviously with very like scary supernatural horror stuff, and I think that's what makes him so special. And I think Mike Flanagan really gets that balance, so to see him kind of lean a little more into that that kind of tearjerker, I could see this be a little bit of a tearjerker,
absolutely, for
sure. And just to see him lean a little bit more on that, I'm very curious to see how he does, because I think he could really knock it out of the park. This could be something special.
I agree. Brent, what do you think of The Life of Chuck?
I was kind of disappointed to see that they cast Zachary Levi as Chuck, so that was kind of disappointing.
It is cool that this is a direct continuation of that.
The direct
that is
continuation
true.
of the long-running NBC series. No, I don't know anything about the story. Actually, isn't Bob Odenkirk in the movie? Do I have that right? I don't even know who's actually playing Chuck.
Oh,
anyway.
Tom Hiddleston is playing Chuck.
Tom Hiddleston, okay. Yeah. I don't know why. Okay, so I didn't even get that part actually right. But anyway, regardless, yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about the story of the novella, but definitely like Mike Flanagan's work in the past, and he definitely does. I mean, he's done a lot of horror work. Clearly has this sort of artistic sort of kinship with Stephen King, so I'm sure he'll do a great job. In terms of like the long release thing, I don't know how that's going to play out. I don't know. Neon typically doesn't go to like. They don't typically go to like direct to like rental or whatever. Like they almost always do stuff like theatrically, but I'm like, it almost reminds me, and again, these are two different movies, but it almost reminds me of like Hitman, which I think the Richard Linklater film, which I debuted, I think at maybe Cannes, or maybe it was TIFF. Maybe it was in the fall or something, and then it didn't come out until like June or July of this past. Sorry, my dog is barking in the background.
That's fine.
Of this past year. So it kind of reminds me of a similar kind of like 9 month sort of like waiting period, or roughly like that. So yeah, I mean, it's a bummer for like you, Matt. I know this is like extremely up your alley that you have to wait that long, but
yep.
Maybe that'll just make it all the better when it does drop. But yeah, it is curious when they do like such a long waiting period. I don't know how distributors figure any of this stuff out, but
me neither. And it's, to me, it's not like it premiered early enough in the year at like TIFF or wherever it premiered that like they could have like gotten the deal in place and gotten a theatrical run and gotten it for award season this year. But I don't know. Well, we'll see what happens, but I'm excited nonetheless. It was a little heartbreaking to take the life of Chuck to take a man's life, and, move it from my private, like 2024 movies, like watch list on Letterboxd and move it to my 2025 movies. So it was a little painful, but yeah. But speaking of future releases, I do have a quick rundown of a quick piece of news that came out recently that Scream 7 is going to be releasing in theaters on February 27th, 2026. So we have over a year until the next installment of the Scream franchise. How do you guys feel about that? I'm fine with it. I think as the Gen Z says, let them cook. We'll see what happens and everything. Mitch, I know you haven't necessarily been a big fan of the resurgence of the Scream franchise. At least you weren't a fan of Scream 6, as I remember. How do you feel about this news? Are you looking forward to Scream 7 at all?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm always looking forward to a new Scream movie. I love these, 80s, 90s in this case, kind of horror franchises. And even if they turn into complete shit, which I don't think the Scream movies necessarily have, but I'm still always holding out hope that the next one will be good. For me, I just really think that the absence of Wes Craven, I think, is really felt with 5 and 6. And I felt like the Radio Silence guys, their idea of sort of, and look, it's not like Scream 4 or something was like this brilliant like deconstruction of like horror of that era, but there were sequences there that were directed with real verve and some really clever ideas. And I felt like Scream 5 and Scream 6, their ideas of sort of trying to comment on like the current state of horror and stuff. And there's so much to talk about. There's so much to do. Is really just kind of characters just referencing things, just being like, it's called elevated horror. It's like, that's not really, and then in Scream 6, you have so many people being like, well, this is the sequel to the reboot. So like, this part's going to kind of suck. Like they kind of comment on like how like, oh, this might be sort of lazy writing. It's like, all right, well, just pointing out that your movie is lazily written doesn't like mean that your movie isn't lazily written.
Right.
And I just thought 6, like, I thought that in 5, the reveal of who the killer was kind of clever, if not a little too like much of an easy target. It just felt like kind of low hanging fruit. I felt like 6. I don't even think I could explain to you who the killer was or why. It's been a while since I've watched it, but
oh wow,
I just remember being like, okay, we're like in total Looney Tunes territory now, where it's like, oh, it's my friend's dentist. It's like Sydney's dentist cousin is, and it's just like, how long can we kind of keep dragging this out? And I don't know. I felt like with 6, it was really sad to see. It just felt like the franchise was really past its expiration date so quickly after it had already been rebooted. I will say Scream 7 being directed by Kevin Williamson, although not written by him,
right,
which is odd. Is like, that does have me kind of that does kind of have like pique my interest a little bit more, just because there's somebody else at the helm. So yeah, I don't know. I also really didn't like I think what also really sunk those last two for me, no shade, because I know she got really unjustly booted from this franchise for some real bullshit. But I really didn't like Melissa Barrera's character or performance in 5 or 6. So anyways, that's my whole long rant. I'm cautiously optimistic for Scream 7.
Nice. And while I disagree, I'm not going to say I disagree with your opinion. I will just say I hold different opinions than that. I respect your opinion on those as well.
Totally fair.
Yeah, as I hover over the boot button on this chat.
We haven't even gotten
the eject button.
Yes. Brent, any thoughts on the Scream franchise and how completely wrong Mitch is in his analysis of the later sequels?
Well, he's obviously very wrong. We know that.
Well, yeah.
I didn't like 5 for some reason, and I liked 6 for some reason.
Okay.
That's about as far as I can say. I don't know why. I like the whole New York City thing in 6. I thought that was cool, and I thought they made good use of the space. And I hate to say this, Pat, but I feel like they 6 kind of ended in a spot where it seemed like, okay, they can actually put the mask down and sort of be done with the franchise. But then they're not going to. And I kind of felt bad liking 6 because of all the stuff with like Nev Campbell, who is now going to be in 7 and all that stuff. I don't really have any sort of like linear fandom with this franchise. I kind of just will tend to see them when they come out. Like I still haven't seen 3 or 4, but I have seen 5 and 6, and I'll probably see 7. So yeah, interesting with Kevin Williamson returning. He didn't direct that movie 6, that COVID era.
No, he only wrote that
but he
one.
wrote it. Yeah. So I was going to say, if he had written and directed that one, that would be kind of interesting to see what. I don't know what that would be like, but he didn't. So I don't know. What a Scream directed movie from him will look like. So yeah, that'll be an interesting development.
Yeah, I agree. So that is to come in February of 2026. So let's go ahead and talk about something that came out in October of 2024. Are you guys ready for our Joker Folie Deux review for this episode of The Obsessive Viewer?
Let's Folie do it.
All right, nice. So we're going to go ahead and go into the feature review of this episode very late in the podcast, but feel free to check the show notes for timestamps. You can find those show notes at obsessiveviewer.com/OV444 and on the notes section of whatever podcast app you're listening to this on. As is customary on the reviews, we're going to be doing a non-spoiler kind of broad strokes review of the movie, and then we'll go into spoilers later in the review. I will play a clip from the trailer to separate out the spoiler section. Again, check the show notes for timestamps to navigate around that if you need to. But Joker Folie Deux came out in theaters October 4th, 2024. It is the sequel to Todd Phillips's Academy Award nominated. Did Joaquin Phoenix win for that?
He did.
Fuck. The Academy Award winning Joker. I actually didn't mind the first movie that much, but anyway, the follow-up to the Academy Award-winning Joker movie. The premise for Folie Deux is struggling with his dual identity. Failed comedian Arthur Fleck meets the love of his life, Harley Quinn, while incarcerated at Arkham State Hospital. Director for this movie was once again Todd Phillips, and writers were Todd Phillips and Scott Silver. The cast includes Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, Brendan Gleeson, Catherine Keener, Zazie Beetz, Steve Coogan, and Harry Lawty. So let's go ahead and go into our non-spoiler review of Joker Folie Deux. But first, what did you guys think of Joker first time around? I think that came out in 2019, I believe. What did you think of Joker? And then we can get into our non-spoiler thoughts on Folie Deux. Brent, do you want to get us started?
Sure. I liked Joker for what it was. I think at that time in 19, it was like, MCU and DCU sort of like fighting. I mean, they still kind of, well, actually, no, because the DCU is dead now. But like, there was like, those are kind of the two pillars. And Warner's was like, let's like do something that's kind of like out of left field and technically a comic book movie, but not like a traditional superhero movie. So I kind of, went with it into it, being up for that. I like it for what it is, which is, absolutely, ripping off of Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, as everyone says, which is 100% accurate. But did really like Joaquin Phoenix's performance, and thought it was like the way that it's shot, like the score, like there were things about it that I really enjoyed. The kind of like feverish fandom that it inspired and everything, which I think this sequel kind of tries to reckon with, which we'll talk about, is something that I don't feel any kinship with. Like I liked it well enough, but like it could have easily just been its own thing. It should have been its own thing, that it became such a huge hit and making $1 billion and all these Oscar nominations and I think a couple wins. It's kind of a weird thing when it's a movie you sort of like, because it's like, okay, well, I don't like it that much, so I don't know. I guess that's my general take on the first one.
Sure. Mitch, how do you feel about Joker?
Yeah, I thought the first Joker was like on like a technical level, kind of almost like immaculate. Just like the cinematography, the performances, the score, like Brent mentioned. I mean, just when you're watching the movie, it feels very tactile and labored over in a way a lot of these giant comic book properties very rarely do. So, on that level, I found it pretty refreshing. I thought the script for the movie was kind of dumb. It just there just wasn't a lot going on. I felt like the movie was very simplistic. Like what you see is what you get. And, that said though, like the script was not enough to just sink like the whole enterprise for me. Because even though it's pretty simplistic, and I think that simplicity kind of makes the movie feel a little like up its own ass at times, just in terms of how immaculate everything else is. But it's still a pretty entertaining movie, just for a God's Lonely Man, kind of, Paul Schrader knockoff, as we mentioned, the Scorsese knockoff. I thought it was pretty cool. And I thought it was like almost like a fun, just from an outside perspective as a comic book fan, I'm like, oh, it's like an interesting experiment. Like, hey, what if we removed this comic book character from any kind of comic book context and placed him in like a gritty 70s, psychological thriller? Like, what would that be like? It wouldn't feel anything like Batman or like the comics, but it is kind of just interesting, right, to see. Again, I think as a one-off, I think the discourse for the movie on both sides was pretty overblown. 11 Oscar nominations, that felt a little much to me, but whatever. There's way more offensive movies that have gotten more attention at the Oscars.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So whatever. And I also thought like this sort of like incel outrage about like, inspiring incels. I thought that was also super overblown, because it's like, okay, ever since the Dark Knight trailer came out, there have been weirdos on the internet with fucking Joker profile pictures lurking in the comments. It's just like, okay, you know what I mean? I just felt like that was a kind of a moral panic that was even more unfortunate because a lot of it was coming from like more left-leaning people and critics and voices, which I just kind of like to think that side is typically above those kind of things. So that also just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And like you said, all for a movie that's like pretty good. It's entertaining. It could have been a lot better, but as a movie, it was a fun little one-off, or what we thought would be a one-off.
Yeah. I revisited Joker before watching Folie à Deux, and yeah, it's fine. I don't hate it. I actually liked it quite a bit when I saw it in theaters back in 2019. But it had never really stayed with me. It's something that's just like, yeah, I enjoyed it well enough. I think that the reaction to it, the fandom surrounding, or not even fandom, just like really the acclaim that it got it felt very not quite due, especially since it is borrowing so heavily from other movies and other just general aesthetics, and the messaging of it didn't sit quite as well with me the second time around. It just felt like it just felt very much like it felt like Todd Phillips had something to say with this character and with this story, and it wasn't quite as interesting having it be tied to Batman and tied to that lore. But the elements of that were somewhat interesting here and there. And it got tied together pretty well at the end. Like, I thought all of that was pretty solid, pretty solid stuff. And I really didn't need a sequel, and I wasn't really looking forward to this. So those are my rambling, just like kind of baseline thoughts on the first Joker movie. It's okay, but I don't think it deserved to be as heavily garnered by to earn that much money. I will say that. So so now several years later, 5 years later, we have Joker Folie à Deux, which feels like Todd Phillips panicking, thinking, fuck, I made a $1 billion movie, like a successful movie that made $1 billion. What the hell am I gonna do now? And we've got Joker Folie à Deux. So in non-spoilers, let's get into our thoughts on Joker Folie à Deux, which has been just kind of raked over the coals among the internet and the critic space. And Mitch, I'm very excited to have you on because you are one of the big champions of this movie. You adore it. You have the makeup on right now.
Yeah.
So
got damaged tattooed on the forehead.
Yes.
Even though wrong Joker, but
right.
But it feels so right.
It does. Yeah. He walked so Arthur Fleck could run. So Mitch, do you want to get us kicked off with how you feel about Joker Folie à Deux and non-spoilers?
No problem. Speaking of discourse, I feel like once or twice a year, and I'm not saying that people who dislike the movie, present company included, are insincere in their dislike of a movie. I genuinely do not think that. I do feel like once or twice a year, maybe even less, there comes a movie where you can just sense the blood in the water. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like the movie's coming out and people are ready to pounce. Like they're like, I can't wait to hate this movie because I know I'm not going to like it. And when I watch it and sure enough, don't like it, I'm going to rip into it. I think some of this is self-inflicted. I think by Todd Phillips himself, because if you read his interviews and stuff, he sounds pretty pretentious. He sounds a little bit obnoxious. The movie's called Joker Folie à Deux, like so I can understand that, but I will say like I'm even surprised at just how definitively this movie is being shut down. So clearly I feel like I'm taking crazy pills because I kind of loved this movie. I think it's way better than the first one.
Okay.
I think it's significantly better. Like I would give the first one maybe like a 3 out of 5 stars, and I would probably give this like a 4 out of 5 stars.
Wow.
I really liked it. Now, I'm curious how I'll feel on the second viewing, because I think a lot of my enjoyment, not a lot, not most of it, but I would say a good amount of it was just the shock of what I was seeing on the screen. How I felt like I was watching like an Andy Warhol movie or something, an experimental film where Todd Phillips was like, I am actively, every opportunity that we have to have fun or give the audience the kind of catharsis that they want watching a Joker movie, I'm not going to do that. Like, every time you think we're going to get there, I'm going to, take a hard left turn. In fact, like, I'm going to make a lot of this movie about how the Joker is barely going to be in the movie. Mm-hmm. Like, it's all going to be Arthur Fleck. He's barely going to be Joker ever. When he is Joker, it's almost him faking it, right? We have that scene like of him in the courtroom where he's doing that Joker dance from the original. And you could tell he's trying to kind of hype himself up and return to this mindset, but it's just not sticking. In fact, this character is weak. He's pathetic. He's easily bested by other people. He's not smart. He's not somebody to aspire to at all. It's a complete inversion of what the first movie is doing. And I mean, and that's not even getting to the musical elements, which I just kind of couldn't believe how almost perversely anti-musical this movie was being at time.
Yeah.
Saying like, we're not going to have these big show-stopping musical sequences because this is a bleak, dingy world. Mm-hmm. And there's very little hope here. So this is often just going to be these kind of downcast, low-key, roughly hewn musical sequences. And I found the movie absolutely fascinating on that level. I just sort of can't believe how that Todd Phillips got away with this, that they allowed him to do this. And, so to make your Joker movie, not have the Joker in it, be a musical, and this dour courtroom drama, I think is kind of a Joker move, guys, if you're thinking about it. And I don't know if Todd Phillips was thinking that way. I mean, it's the least comic book movie probably to ever be made. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you could name a less comic book movie. This makes Logan look like Avengers Endgame. And it does. And honestly, on a purely narrative level, I actually found the movie oddly affecting of this kind of full circle treatment of like, hey, no spoilers here, but like Arthur Fleck kind of has gained this notoriety as this character as the Joker. Society, he still can't win. Society still doesn't give a shit about you. They only care about what you symbolize to them, what it means to them. So how that can kind of comment on celebrity culture, but also, our modern day political landscape. I mean, there's very much like a Donald Trump thing there. And, I found that so fascinating to kind of be like, yeah, like these kind of people don't win. Like this is how it works in the real world, is that like these kind of people don't often rise out of their circumstances. They are chewed up and spit out by the machine. So loved the movie. I mean, I really, the more I've thought about it, the more I've liked it. I don't think it's perfect. All right. I'm not here to tell you it's like the best movie of the year.
Sure.
It's a weird movie that I feel like only weirdos like me who can just enjoy how not fun the movie is. I kind of like, I liked it for how not fun it is. That could really only enjoy. So I knew watching it, I was like, this is gonna tank, and it tanked even worse than I thought. So I don't think it's perfect. I think that like Lady Gaga's version of Harley Quinn, she's great. She's a great actress, but I feel like the first movie had this issue too, where like the other characters that weren't Arthur Fleck often feel like a stand-in for the movie's themes rather than like an actual character.
Yeah.
And I was enjoying those themes so much that I still enjoyed the movie, but like I did think like Lady Gaga is like Harley Quinn. Like there could have been more with her. And there is something. It's kind of why I like the movie, but there is something frustrating about a movie that is like refusing to tell its own story. Almost, it's all dealing with the consequences of the original. And I kind of admire that this movie's like, fuck you. You want to see. You want to see Joker and Harley Quinn like go on a crime spree about the town? We're not going to do that. I'm going to break Joker down now. Like I'm going to completely break him down. So yeah, I thought this was such a wild and fascinating movie. I can see this movie becoming maybe a cult classic in 10 years. It reminds me of like Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 or Ang Lee's Hulk or Batman Returns, these kind of big IP movies that go so far off the path of their source material that people end up kind of just appreciating them for how like bold and daring they are. But yeah. I don't know. So I really liked the movie. That's like my whole spiel. But obviously I know I'm alone in that opinion. So you guys can kind of.
That's really interesting and really well said. We'll talk about that. But Brent, I want you to give your overview. What did you think of Mitch's impassioned orating on the movie?
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. I'm trying to think when I first heard about this and they were going to make it a musical, and I heard they were doing, Phoenix and Gaga and sort of thing. Like I sort of had a preconception of what you said at the tail end of what your comments on the movie about. Like I kind of figured it would be like a Joker and Harley like on the run, like Bonnie and Clyde sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then watching the trailer, the first trailer, that kind of reinforced that idea to me, because I knew from the trailer, like I knew it was going to be a musical, and because it is a musical, the trailer wasn't going to have like make it seem like a musical at all, because God knows, so we can't do that. So, and then people came out and they were like, "Oh, Ha Ha Land," and because there was some stuff that was like that kind of looked like La La Land. Being inspired by the same movies that Damien Chazelle was when he made La La Land, Umbrellas, Cherbourg. It's stuff that, again, in the same kind of thing where it's like, well, look, Todd Phillips did that with Joker. Like, if he is a good, if he's, someone that wants to learn from these great films and then kind of, sort of remake them. I understand people having a problem with that, but it's like, if you're going to steal from movies, like, in my opinion, like La La Land or, some of the other, Young Girls of Rochefort and, Umbrellas, Cherbourg, so like that. I mean, that would be good stuff to steal from if that's what Todd Phillips is to do, because he's not making boner comedies anymore. Although we'll see, maybe he will be now. I'm not sure. I was actually even thinking, and I said in my review, like, actually him doing a Rogues on the Run sort of thing. He's done quite a few road movies. Road Trip was the first, I think one of his very early movies. The Hangover movies are kind of road movies to an extent. Due Date is a road movie. So I actually, like, again, I tried to hold out hope. And then going into this, I was just sort of like, okay. And then so the movie, this isn't a spoiler to say the opening scene in the movie, is it?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Begins with an animated short and then doesn't try any less to push buttons throughout the rest of like the 2 hour, 20-minute runtime. It is kind of boldly anti-entertainment, Mitch. I agree with you. It's just a matter of if that's a feature or a bug, and it was kind of a bug for me.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
I will say, very broadly, this movie to me is a prison drama, a musical, and a courtroom drama. I think as a prison drama, the first kind of I guess you could say kind of the first section of it, I think is pretty strong again. And that I think the technical elements of it that were in the first Joker, the score and the cinematography are in Joaquin Phoenix's performance are all there. So like, I think past that animated short, like that first kind of stretch, I was like, this is pretty good. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but this is like at least that. Then the musical stuff comes in and now didn't really work because I didn't really think they like staged any of it well. And it's not original music. It's all standards. And I don't think we'll get into all that. But the courtroom drama stuff is the stuff that sinks this movie for me because it's not, to me, it's not a good courtroom drama at all for, I guess, reasons like we can get into, but it's not really a spoiler to say like it's kind of relatively obvious what the outcome is going to be. I think in terms of like the shenanigans and how the trial is going to go, none of that surprised me like any of the stuff with the first Joker surprised me. So I don't really think they like subvert any of the stuff there. I think it keeps pulling us back to that first movie. You alluded to that, Mitch, in a way that I feels just like tell your own story. Like, let's move on. And I think the most damning thing that I think it does with that courtroom part of this movie is it really shines a light on how Todd Phillips has no idea what to do with this character. Like he made this whole movie, about this whole first movie about Joker, and I think he did it again, kind of aping these kind of grittier movies from the past. But then when it comes to this, it's like, oh, you got to make a whole other movie. Like, that's where I think this movie falls flat. He just doesn't care about this character or really know what to do with him. So that's the part for me that was the, not the showstopper in the good sense, but in the like non-starter, like bad sense. We'll talk about it, but like if there's a way they could have made more of the movie that I thought it was going to be with the trailers, I think I probably would have come out enjoying it. But I don't know. Maybe I'm a dope and a sucker for wanting the thing that it seemed like they were going for. So that's what I got.
I don't think you are, because I think clearly almost everybody wanted that and didn't like what they got. So this is one of the biggest movie versions of "Am I the Asshole?" like I've had in a long time. I'm like, was I having like an aneurysm during that movie? So I just I don't know, interpreted it a different way. But
that's really interesting. I didn't like the movie, and it's interesting for a couple of reasons. One being that I did have I'll try to navigate around spoilers with this, but I did the thing that no one should do when going into a movie. I had an idea of what direction I wanted the movie to go in based on the trailers and all of that. I thought there was a very good opportunity for Todd Phillips to tell a story about Joker through the lens of a musical with Harley Quinn. And I feel like it was immediately brought to my attention within the opening moments that like, okay, he never had that intention to tell it. But what's interesting is that the idea that I had being that it would be like a Bonnie and Clyde jailbreak murder spree thing. Like my whole idea was like, it would be far more interesting to see a movie where these two characters fall in love, they break out, they go on this crime spree, and each like iteration of each crime that they do is a musical number, and then by the end the musical stuff stops and you see that like all the whimsical like musical numbers that they did was just masking like brutal, like grotesque violence, and that would kind of bring it all together to be like, yeah, these are not characters that you want to be like propping up or anything. And I pushed that thought away when I realized that this is not what the movie was going to be. But what I found interesting is that the movie still, like Mitch, like you said, it deconstructs the Joker character in an interesting way, that it kind of gets to a similar point, but in a way that feels like, to me, Todd Phillips had no fucking clue what he was doing, had, in my opinion, no idea where he was going with it or what message he wanted to convey. And I do think that there is messaging here. There is like an interesting story like buried in here, but I just feel like Todd Phillips didn't know how to tell it. And like the little glimmers of that, like this sense of identity that he has between being Arthur Fleck and Joker, like there's stuff that could have been explored, like that could have been explored a lot more interestingly, but it just fell flat at every single turn for me. And it just like, I don't even think I really hated this movie. Like, this wasn't a movie that I like despise or anything. It's just, it really does feel like, and I'll go ahead and read the opening part of my, of my Letterboxd review blurb, but I put, in The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger's Joker tells Harvey Dent, "I'm like a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught one, you know? I just do things." And this is my Letterboxd blurb. That seems to be the approach Todd Phillips took with Joker Folie Deux, except not in any intentional way. The first Joker movie plays out like Scorsese cosplay with a mental health message, as misguided as it mostly was. Folie Deux, however, feels like carte blanche was given to someone who didn't expect his first outing to catch fire the way it did, and therefore he was left with nothing in the tank for the sequel. Which could be harsh, and could be just indicative of me just maybe missing the point a little bit, but that's kind of how I came away from it feeling. And we can kind of talk more in depth about that in the remainder of the non-spoiler section. But that's kind of how I felt about it coming out of the theater. It just felt like try as it might, it didn't feel like it had a centralized message as strong as the first one did, where Todd Phillips is telling the story about this man who is slipping through the cracks of a flawed system, and he has these mental health issues. He is at times a very kind of, kind of cliched person, but at its heart, it is like a story about someone who's slipping through the cracks of society, a thing in which we all live, as the Joker has been fond of saying, that we live in a society. But he's slipping through the cracks, and that finally causes this schism to where he goes on like his crime spree and he does his thing. Here, it just doesn't feel like there's much to really anchor that story or continue that story in a way that's anchored in any kind of talent on Todd Phillips' part. So those are my kind of broad thoughts on Joker Folie Deux. I'm sorry, Mitch.
Oh no! Hey, I did not come on this podcast thinking that I was gonna be. I was going to have company and enjoying the movie. Frankly, I went into the movie thinking I would dislike it, expecting to dislike it. And I don't know if that maybe played into my more positive reaction, but the longer I've sat with it, the more I've really appreciated it. And, for me, I never felt like this was a very like disjointed vision. I felt like it was a very, I felt like it was very like specific, like the purpose of what he was trying to achieve here and how he was trying to break down this character, and essentially reduce him to nothing by the end. But what I did feel like, and I see a lot of reviews just saying like the movie felt meandering, it felt boring to them. Which obviously, that's so subjective. So I can't be like, I can't fault someone if they just felt bored in a movie. I was never bored by it. And for me, like Brent, when you were talking about those like courtroom sequences and stuff, I guess like the tension I felt that kept me invested was more of just that tension of, obviously the overlying question of like, is it a split personality? I don't think we're ever necessarily supposed to really actually be wondering that. No. Because the original movie did not, imply that at all. But what kept me kind of invested was just wondering like whether or not, Arthur was going to kind of jump into this personality full and embrace that kind of, or if he would be able to, because you're right. Like Brent's like, the dude shot someone in the face on national television. Like he's not gonna do well in this trial. like he is caught red-handed. So yeah, my I was just sort of wondering like if he was going to kind of embrace that identity and kind of sort of fall for like the allure of Harley, who obviously she is somebody who you could kind of be a stand-in for a lot of real world things, but in the movie she's very much one of the people kind of infected by like Joker's idea of like what he represents. And I don't know, I just found that fascinating where he would fall at the end. And I thought there was like a lot of great scenes but you know, that kind of foreshadowed the conclusion we ultimately reach, like the sex scene, which I felt like was a very, again, such an awesome and in my opinion, subversive way to do this, where the sex scene is like uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It's awkward. There's like literally a part where she's like, do you need me to guide you in? Or, you know what I mean? Like, just, it's not a cool or romantic sex scene. And she has him put on the makeup because obviously, you know, that's what she wants. She doesn't want to sleep with Arthur.
Right.
I was still turned on, Mitch. I don't know. You know,
yeah, I mean, it was hot.
You can try to disparage it as much. I'm still going to get turned on. All right. Sex.
Yeah. So I thought that was really a great way to kind of build on that theme. So yeah, just that kind of identity crisis that he's having, I found to be kind of what kept me invested. But yeah. I can understand if that didn't work for everybody.
I think one of the things I was disappointed in was because, you know, Lady Gaga is obviously an incredible singer. I think the performance I've seen her give so far, I think she's can be quite good. I honestly just think with this, the disappointment was I just thought her character was really underwritten, and it's tough too when, you know, Margot Robbie, you know, just was in, you know, 3 different movies, which, you know, one of them, the unfairly maligned Suicide Squad from 2016. You know, wow. So both going to let that go. Huh? Right.
Oh man,
That's a different podcast.
Again, hovering over the boot button.
Anyway, you know, that was a very, you know, regardless of what you thought of any of those 3 movies necessarily, like that's a really good screen Harley Quinn. I think she did something really pretty terrific with that character. So I think Lady Gaga coming into this, I think it's, again, I don't have any problem with them doing a musical, having Harley Quinn, having the 2 of them, again, Madison 2, all this stuff, like doing that. I just think that, again, the way it was carried out, I think with like her character, especially, I feel like I just, you know, you mentioned a good point, Mitch. I think they have some good scenes. I think they have good chemistry even. But I just, outside of what you said about like, she fell in love with the persona and she fell in love with like, you know, the media's idea of him as opposed to him. I think that's interesting, but I don't really think her character is much more than that. And kind of what you said about, I think, well, what you said about Joker 2019, that like the characters kind of like embody the other themes of the movie, where I feel like that was the one that I would be fine with her even being a mouthpiece for those themes, but it just felt like that same one kind of over and over. And I was just like, she doesn't feel like a character. And just kind of knowing like that there are all these scenes in the trailer and stuff that people got like footage of or whatever. Like, I think they caught a lot of her stuff, and I wish they had a better hold on her character because, again, I think she's giving the best performance that she can here. Mm-hmm. One thing that's more to the musical part of it is, I wish they had 5 years to do this. I wish they had just, if they were going to do a musical, just write original music, like just actually do it instead of trying to reappropriate these standards that are very much in Lady Gaga's wheelhouse. You know, she did 2 collaborative albums with Tony Bennett. She loves this, you know, Great American Songbook, these old pop standards. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Clearly, she can belt them out. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they work here in the way. I honestly think they could have integrated maybe one of those, like That's Entertainment or something. You know, they could have like integrated in this. But I think other than that, they should have just actually written a musical, like actually done the thing. Whereas this to me is just, again, sort of just like a lazy version of like, oh, well, we're doing a musical because it's, you know, different. And you wouldn't expect that from the first Joker because it was so dark. It's like, that's cool. I have no problem with you doing a musical, but don't do one that's just like bringing these standards back and not really, in my opinion, you know, it's just really doing anything with them. And that thing of like the disparity in their singing, I mean, musicals they don't always have like the best singers, but like the chasm between Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix in terms of vocal talent, and even within their characters too, right? Because there are times where Harley is kind of singing more like kind of weakly and what you would maybe expect from more like a naturalistic sort of thing. But then a lot of times she's doing the showy Broadway affectations, and you're like, okay, well, I don't know how much of this is like Harley Quinn and how much of this is like Lady Gaga just doing what she knows how to do. And then like Joaquin Phoenix, like again, standards can be pretty challenging to sing. Yet another reason it's like just write original music that's in his range that works. Again, it's so funny because like people thought they had this movie pegged. To your point, Mitch, like from square one, like it's like, I guess I wanted La La Land. I wanted Ha Ha Land even more than I knew, you know? So, I mean, I guess, yeah, that's what I have there. And I will say the discourse, I will agree with you too, Mitch. Like the discourse, it's very much on the total other end where I do think people were prejudiced kind of going into this. And then I think people really are delighting in watching this movie bomb critically and audience score, what, a tipped popcorn bucket or whatever the hell we're calling that.
Yeah.
You know, financial, it's just the whole thing. So I think people really are enjoying the pile on there where I don't, and I know you're not saying I'm saying this, but like, I don't really delight in it. Like, I don't hate it. I just is kind of just sort of disappointed in it because I do think it has some core concepts that I think could really work. But yeah, there's no question there has been like a huge pile on with this movie. And
I guess like for me, and again, obviously I don't think you guys are doing this, just talking about the general consensus or the, you know, the film Twitter and and just you know, a lot of like movie web like I was just reading an article right before this on Slash Film talking about like just like how legendary this drop off was. The 80% drop off for the second weekend box office of Joker 2. There's kind of a very snide tone of like, that's almost like, yeah, you deserve this, you know, like you had this coming, buddy. And you know, it's just like, for me personally, like, even if the film doesn't work for you, right? Like you, writer for the Hollywood Reporter or whatever, writing about how amusing it is that this movie's crashing and burning. It's like, would you not rather see a studio taking such a big swing and doing something this ambitious with an established property than, I don't know, like Deadpool and Wolverine? Like it was a fun movie. I had fun watching it, like the rest of America, right? That was like the most beloved movie of the year in terms of, I'm sure, like popcorn scores and whatever. But it's like,
as verified hot as it possibly could be.
Yeah, it's verified hot, baby.
Yes.
Joker 2 is ice cold. But you know, it's like, wouldn't you just rather seeing them attempt something that's interesting and ambitious? And even if it falls flat on his face, like, I don't think Todd Phillips is a skilled enough filmmaker to make some of these points as nuanced as they should be in the second Joker, although it still was a satisfying experience for me. But at the same time, it's like, I'm really glad it exists in that there's still this kind of freedom. I mean, you know, whenever one of these things bombs, though, it just worries me that, you know, there's these.
It's going to keep on going safe and as safe as possible.
Yeah, you're right. They're like, okay, Deadpool and Wolverine, what worked for that? There were lots of cool cameos and Easter eggs and funny one-liners. You know, it's like, that just worries me. I don't want it to go too far in that direction. Yeah. And just as somebody who loves comic books and comic book movies, I've just been kind of disheartened to see like things going more and more in that direction. So when something like this comes out, it's like, oh wow, okay, like you can still do some wild shit with these characters.
I think there's just something in that.
All of them Batman characters. Could you imagine?
I think they're yeah,
like Batman showing up in this movie.
Jesus,
why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is. I think mean-spirited is like a good way to put it. I think like, especially on Reddit too. I'm on Reddit all the time, and like all the subreddits are really like. And I know they're joking. Well, so like whatever. But like, but it's just like, I agree with you. It's like. It's with that girl's line of what's her name saying like, oh yeah, let's all make fun of the girl who went out there and put herself out there and everything. But it's kind of, I mean, this is like the movie version of that. And it's like, in terms of like the lessons that studios are going to learn, you're absolutely right, Mitch. Like that's the stuff they're going to learn all the wrong lessons from both movies, from something like Deadpool and Wolverine and this. They'll say like, well, we can't do a musical. And it's like, to be honest, I think this could have been a good musical. I really do. Like, I don't think, if they had put effort into like crafting the musical part of it, and if Todd Phillips had, put sequences together, the actual like musical numbers that worked and didn't feel half-assed to me. It's ironic though. I think one of the best scenes in this movie, is one that it involves music, but not like one of the standards, nothing that someone is singing. It's a Billy Joel song, My Life. And it's kind of a faux one take shot. I won't say the context, but I think it's actually really well staged, and it does like capture the intensity of that like moment really well. And I saw a scene like that and I'm like, it's like a bummer because, it's like there can be no true despair without hope. And that was like the glimmer shining down from the clouds. I was like, he has some good scenes in him. I've liked some of Todd Phillips's movies. They're very different than this. And I even like Joker for what he was kind of emulating. But I agree. I don't think the pile-on stuff is... I don't really think it's great for art discourse. I mean... to be honest, like, and again, I know what you're saying, like, not what we're talking about, not actually like discussing it, but like just the idea of just oh, this movie sucks, this sucks, and it's just like after a time, it's like, all right, whatever, like, who cares? Like, why do you delight in, this thing's already down, and they got paid, they got their paychecks, but it's like, who cares? It's like so reductive at this point. I don't know. So I agree with you.
And also, it's just the kind of thing. It's like, I think there's a huge difference between not enjoying a movie like you guys and discussing in a constructive way like what didn't work for you, right. Versus just kind of like callous dismissal and condescending behavior where it's just kind of like flagrant negativity online. Like that's the kind of stuff I'm just like, okay, like that. I mean, I've long had a problem with that kind of thing, mostly because it just seems like with the, and this is like to get further into a tangent and everything, it just feels like, the internet, like that kind of circle of like film Twitter and like the bubbles that I'm in and participate in online, whether it be the Twitterverse or the Threads multiverse, or freaking TikTok, which is a drain on all society. Those bubbles just feel like, and I've said this before many times, it just feels like, okay, we need to react to something that is popular right now for the next 10 minutes, and we need to react in the most aggressive way possible because we're throwing our thoughts out into just a sea of other thoughts. So we need to be the most heated or most impassioned with this to stand out from the crowd. And at the end of the day,
those circles, those bubbles, I get very tired of because it feels like freaking high school. Like it just feels like, you know, you're trying to stand out in a crowd. And even though I did not like Joker Folie à Deux to the point where I strongly disliked it, I'm nervous to get into the nitty gritty of it because it's been like a week or so. It's gone from my mind, which is probably not the best thing to say as a critic on a film podcast, but it's like I'm not holding on to any anger toward it. I just think it's a bad movie. So I don't know. And
totally fair.
And I didn't delight in experiencing the pain of having to sit through it. I didn't delight in the fact that I was one of 3 people in the theater the Monday after it came out. So yeah, maybe a little bit of maybe I had a little bit of enjoyment of that amount of a drop off. But I do want to ask you guys, having not listened to this, have you guys heard Lady Gaga's Harlequin album that she released in late September in the lead up to this? It's inspired by Joker Folie à Deux. It's a companion album. Have you guys listened to it? And follow-up question to that, do you think that the music in the movie would have been better served if Lady Gaga was like involved in creating the music instead of it being just music already established? Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yes, on both counts.
Nice.
I heard the album. It's mainly standards. There's a couple new songs that are going back.
A lot of songs from the movie.
Yeah, a lot of songs from the movie and a lot of overlap there, which is fine. It's a companion album, but no problem with that.
Sure.
So again, kind of echoing my thoughts before, this is in her wheelhouse. She can belt him out. She's a great singer. I just don't think they serve. I think it's easy. Just bottom line, I think I think maybe she had a good amount of control over what this movie was going to be, which I don't have a problem with. But I think I think the problem is that it's very, I think sort of lazy to just be like, okay, well, I've done this thing before. I've done these jazz standards before. Like, let's just do that and we'll put on clown makeup on it and then it'll be Joker Folie à Deux. And it's just like, no. And to your second point, that's what I was saying. Like whether Lady Gaga was writing the music or for the musical, or if you get, someone else to do it, I think they absolutely should have done original music for the movie.
Yeah, I didn't realize the album was not all original music. I should have scrolled down.
They're all reworked versions of the songs in the movie. So it's not like the Joker Folie à Deux soundtrack, which is literally just transposed from the movie. I thought I listened to snippets from the album. I thought it was okay. A lot of these, I just think these kind of covers that Lady Gaga's doing feel very like strictly covering the songs. I'm not really adding any of my own like interpretation to the song. I'm not a huge fan of like where it's like, oh, Lady Gaga's covering That's Life by Frank Sinatra. And it's literally exactly the same, except for it's her vocals instead of Frank Sinatra's. It's just a little bit of like a boring way to cover a song. I mean, listen, Lady Gaga's unbelievably talented and can do whatever the fuck she wants. So she doesn't need me telling her how to, write her albums, but just my own personal taste. I'm not crazy about those kind of covers.
Sure. Okay. Do you guys want to get into spoilers for Folie à Deux? Because there's some things I want to kind of talk about that we'll see. Do you guys want to go into spoilers for Folie à Deux? And before we do that, do you have any wrapping up non-spoiler thoughts for the movie?
I don't think so. Yeah, we can get into spoilers.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. All right. Well, we are going to go ahead and go into spoilers for Joker Folie à Deux. I'll put a link in the show notes for timestamps if you want to skip around and everything. I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. Beforehand, what did you guys rate it on Letterboxd? I rated it 1.5 stars. How about you guys?
I had it at 3.5 out of 5, and actually I bumped it up to 4 out of 5.
Nice.
So
nice. Brent, how about you?
2 out of 5.
There you go. Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead and go into spoilers for Joker Folie à Deux. When we come back from this clip from the trailer, we will be spoiling the movie.
For once in my life, I have someone who needs me. How about you, Arthur? Do you still think you're a star? Showtime. The whole world smiles with you.
You can do anything you want.
The sun comes.
You're Joker.
All right, so spoilers on for Joker Folie à Deux, which is currently in theaters in the world. So to kind of get us kicked off on the spoiler thing, the thing that's been kind of eating at me, which is maybe actually 100% not a fair criticism of the movie, but I just wanted to get it out there that the Batman universe is one of my favorite universes, and Batman lore is like one of my favorites. It's like something that I really like, and the thing that kind of bothered me about this movie that I'm still kind of working through, and I don't know if I would necessarily go as far as to say that it's something that truly negatively affected my opinion of the movie, but it just felt very weird and peculiar to me that this movie is very much like an anti-Gotham City, anti-Batman lore movie, to the point where Arthur Fleck is stabbed, presumably to death at the end of the movie. And it just feels a little off. Like, I don't understand what the connection is there, like what Todd Phillips is saying by having this not really be in the Batman universe, and like it's very, very peculiar to me, and it just left me feeling like at the end of the day, because I'm an insecure person, I just felt like, hey, I don't understand this, so that means Todd Phillips doesn't understand it, which is mostly a joke. But I really just couldn't wrap my head around like what the overall point was, and I do enjoy in the abstract this idea that, you know, the first movie is about building him up into the Joker, building him up to the point where he has a following, he has people who are rallying behind his message as someone who is a loner and terrifying in his lonesomeness and dangerous in his like mental health issues that have, like I said, slipped through the cracks, and has gotten to the point where, you know, he is a danger to society, and people who follow him will be a danger to society as well. And then the converse of that in Folie à Deux is that I respect in the abstract this idea that he's reckoning with his dual persona as Joker and Arthur Fleck. While it's not as one-to-one as like a split personality thing, it's more like this symbol that he's embodied is not something that he wants to be. And I just feel like the makings of those themes are there, but it just wasn't done with enough, like with a steady enough hand or enough flourish to really tell that story, that side of the story, cohesively or interestingly enough for me. And then when you cap that off with it just basically being just like completely taking him off the table and making him not Joker, and like having that definitive statement at the end just made me feel lost, and didn't fulfill me as a film goer. So thoughts?
Well, I mean, so like you, Matt, I'm a massive Batman nut. You know, I like grew up loving Batman, still love Batman. I don't even care if it's like the worst Batman movie. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get at least a mild amount of enjoyment from it, just because I'm in that world. I'm seeing some new interpretation of that lore. right?
Yes.
That mythology. So like for me, that's awesome. Now Joker is interesting. I agree, Matt, in the sense that it's like, this doesn't feel it. I mean, it's so far removed from its source material that it really, I mean, you could tell Todd Phillips doesn't give a shit about the source material.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. I mean, we get a character named Harvey Dent in this movie who is nothing like any version of Harvey Dent.
No. Nope.
Yeah.
And even at the end, when you see kind of part of his face is blasted off by the thing, you're just kind of like, okay.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
You're just like that felt like the studio was like, you need to reference. There's no Easter eggs in this movie. You need to have an Easter egg. They added those effects in post or something.
Yes.
But that said, the first movie kind of annoyed me because it was so far removed from the source material, where this version of Joker did not ever feel like somebody who could ever stand toe to toe with Batman.
Right.
The world was so grounded. It was so sapped of any kind of comic book pyrotechnics that you're kind of like, what are we doing here? Like, why is this even a Joker movie?
Yeah.
And then it was even more distracting when all of a sudden there's like 5-year-old Bruce Wayne, and you're like, okay, now I'm just confused. Like, the Joker's 35 years older than Batman.
Yes.
I don't know what's happening here.
Which that's something that I felt like in my brain as the movie was kind of accelerating toward that ending in this time around. I was like, is this going to be some weird like switch up where it's like, we were never seeing the origin of Joker, but like there was talk about Harley being pregnant. Like, is her son going to be the real Joker? And
oh God,
like,
well, right. It's like you're trying to fit it together, and ultimately, actually, what this movie did, I actually found that finally satisfying. It made me feel better about that lack of that disconnect in the first one, because I go, oh, this isn't about the Joker. And in this version, right, of Todd Phillips' version of Gotham, the Joker is like this symbol of societal rot, right?
Yes.
Like in Gotham, it's like this toxic stew of all these things that are wrong with Gotham City, and like Arthur Fleck has like emerged as the Joker from that. But you see that it's kind of infected this entire city, right?
Yeah.
There's the riots. I mean, you could almost think of this as like the precursor to like Gotham going bad, and so at the end, when Arthur's stabbed to death, right? We're in spoilers, and the dude carves his own face. I could see people being annoyed that it's like, okay, like a stupid Easter egg. Like, we just saw 2 movies called Joker, and the Joker wasn't even in them. But for me, I thought that was kind of cool, because I was like, okay, so like, kind of like the Joker that we think of as the normal Joker, like a criminal mastermind, which, let's be honest, like this Arthur was like, seems like very low IQ. Like,
oh yeah.
Like
I said in both the movies that he has a lower intelligence. Yeah,
he's not smart. And so for me, I thought that was kind of cool. I was like, oh, so like the Joker is this almost like this like legend of God, I mean? It's a symbol in Gotham, and eventually somebody's going to like claim that, so I thought that was cool. I mean, is it anything like the comics in any way?
No.
But I again, some of my favorite comic book movies are when filmmakers or authors really put their own stamp on the source material, as opposed to just trying to MCU it, just like faithfully kind of recreate it. I'll take like, a Batman Returns or this over like whatever boring version of Batman we got in like,
That's fair. That's fair. Brent, any thoughts on that?
I'm trying to trace the thread of what exactly we were like talking about. But yeah, I mean, the idea again, like that's where I kind of wanted this movie to like again going into it, like like a natural born killers kind of thing, like in terms of like the idea of like the media and how they're kind of speculating on like again I guess in the movie in my mind of like these two or whatever, and the fact that he has his biggest fan or whatever and stuff like that. So I think there's stuff here that could definitely work. It's just very much hard left turns, and who knows? Maybe that's intentional. I don't know. This is not a movie. I mean, the one thing I'll say about it, it's not a movie that seems focus grouped to death.
No.
Which again, more to your point, Mitch, that it's how a lot of these more generic efforts can feel. Whereas this, like, it seems like, and I don't think they had any early screenings of this and everything. So, I mean, it's just like my thing is like, I like it, the idea of them doing this for someone. It's so funny that like Christopher Nolan is gone from Warner's, and like, Todd Phillips, you're up. You're Chris Nolan. I mean, I'm being facetious, but like, it's like, no, don't pick him. He's not our auteur, please. So it's just like, so it's just funny. Like the idea of like, no, we're not gonna like kowtow like the fandom and all this stuff, and we're I like all these things in theory, but this is like one of those ones where it's just like, it's just not this way exactly, but it is. I mean, but I'm not like this. But you're right, man. What you said earlier about like cult classic, I could absolutely seeing this having cult classic status, especially with the way that people are dunking on it. I mean, just like the first Joker, like that's the message of that movie, is people really rally behind an underdog. And in this Folie, in this sequel, they have an underdog that in years later they'll be able to champion. So in a weird way, it is a circular kind of reputation.
Lowest cinema score for any comic book movie,
and that's so wild to me. And it's
they've been
understandable.
Doing cinema scores for decades. I didn't even realize like Batman and Robin had a cinema score. Like
Jesus.
Like how crazy is that?
It is like an anti-comic book movie in every sense of the term, but like it also made me retroactively think, and this is maybe something that's maybe not necessarily fair because I have dogged on Todd Phillips a little bit in this, but like it really feels like it made me feel like the first Joker movie was like Todd Phillips going to Warner Brothers or going to somewhere and being like, hey, I want to make this movie that's basically very heavily influenced by like Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy. And like they were just like, oh, well, why don't we just go ahead and slap like Batman IP on that? And then he had to rework it to be like, oh, it's a Joker movie. Like, it feels like that because it's so disconnected from everything else in the Batman universe. And it just feels like I really like on paper the idea that like maybe he is like this symbol that someone will grasp onto. And I really like that as a duality with the Batman like ideology and lore of Batman being a symbol for, the city and everything as outlined in Christopher Nolan's movie. But like, I just feel like there's not a deft enough hand at the helm of this to really make that a compelling or convincing like motif throughout the entirety of it. It just feels like it's something that's kind of just there, and it did nothing for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's I think when our good friend Sam said he enjoyed the movie, I was like, finally, there's one.
But now there's two. Now there's two of you.
Now there's two of us.
And now you get to celebrate in your madness of two.
Yes.
Yep, and unfortunately he could not make it on the podcast tonight. But
that would have been a cage match, 2-on-2. Oh my god.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Sam brings the aggressive side out of me.
It does everyone, and we love him for it.
Oh, absolutely. Anything else we can talk about in spoilers for Joker Folie Deux, or do we want to start winding it down a little bit?
Yeah, I think Mitch, you made your case for it. I love it.
I hope I didn't like suck all the oxygen out of the proverbial
No.
room.
Oh, not at
No,
all.
quite the
Not at all.
opposite. I feel like I'm breathing fresh air.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I will say that I did enjoy like two parts of this movie. Like I genuinely did enjoy. I really liked the animation sequence at the beginning of the movie. I feel like it didn't connect well. Like it like that set the stage for something that I don't think we really got. Like there wasn't anything. Just like it didn't really feel like a good notice of like the tone or anything. But I thought it was an interesting idea if it didn't have much follow through that I could detect.
It's always cool to just see hand drawn animation on
Yeah.
the screen.
Oh yeah.
True.
Oh yeah.
Never, hardly ever.
Yeah. And then the second thing I liked was I did like the courtroom drama stuff when he started defending himself, when he put on the Joker makeup, especially when he was not interrogating, questioning was it
Gary Puddles?
Gary Puddles. I thought
That was my favorite. The Gary Puddles scene was my favorite of the courtroom stuff.
Yes.
For sure.
That single sequence alone was like, I think that's the reason why I wasn't like hating the movie like aggressively, because I'm like, there's something there to that. Like when he finally becomes Joker for that one scene and he is badgering this person that he traumatized, but he doesn't understand or is unwilling to understand that he traumatized him because he still sees him as like someone that was close to him or something. Like, I think that there's a lot there that's echoing that scene from the first movie where he kills the guy and leaves him there, which I thought was a great scene in the first movie, especially when he has to like open the door for Gary Puddles. It's like very tense and like it really plays into that disconnect that Arthur Fleck has with, you know, what his actions versus his like what he is inflicting upon everyone around him. And I think that that's a great extrapolation of that idea in the second movie, in that scene. I just wish there was more to it. I just wish that was like a more definable thing throughout the entire movie, except for that one sequence. So
I agree. That's a great scene. And it's kind of his realization of like, oh, I thought I was standing up for people like me. I thought I was like a symbol for people like me, but actually like I'm just another thing, you know, oppressing these types of people.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any final thoughts on Joker Folie à Deux, or should we get shivved unmercifully in the hallway? Yes.
Yeah, I think that's it. We can revisit this when it joins the Criterion collection in about
Jesus.
10 years.
In 8 years.
Yes,
eight
yes. Jesus. And it'll be here before we know it. And we'll still be like 15, 20 years away from retiring. To go back to the B-roll recording that we did. But yeah, that is our review of Joker Folie à Deux. And we are going to bid adieu to Mitch here, but let's just wind down. Tell us where we can find you guys online and your work and everything. Brent, do you want to start? And Mitch, since you're gonna spread your wings and fly away, we'll have you go last. So Brent, where can people find you online?
All of my socials and everything can be found on awakeinthedark.com. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Letterboxd, Instagram, all of it.
Nice. And Mitch, where can people find you online?
Yeah, you can find me at midwestfilmjournal.com. I'm reviewing things pretty regularly there. You can find me on Twitter or Letterboxd. I'm pretty active on Letterboxd at wounded_kite. If you want to look me up.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode, Mitch, and thank you, Brent, for the review here as well. So that's it for the feature review. We're going to go into the secondary review of VHS Beyond, but we're going to bid adieu to Mitch. So see you, Mitch, and stay tuned. And before we get to our secondary review, I want to take a quick moment to remind you that if you like the show, please take a moment to follow us on social media and subscribe to and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or whatever your preferred podcast app is. And don't forget to subscribe to the Obsessive Viewer Podcast's YouTube channel as well, where I'm posting more and more videos and live streams of podcasts, as well as interviews with filmmakers at Heartland Film Festival. And if you're interested in starting a podcast of your own, you can go to Libsyn and use promo code OBSESS when you sign up for a new account. You'll get up to 2 months free depending on when you sign up during the month, and we'll get a commission on it as well. I've been using Libsyn as the hosting for all 3 of the podcasts for over a decade now. Never had an issue. Love that service. It is far and away just, it makes it so easy to make a podcast, and that's what I love to do. So check that out, Libsyn.com. Use promo code OBSESS when you sign up for a new account. And now back to the show.
They tell me I view obsessively.
And for tonight's secondary review, Brent and I are going to be sharing our thoughts on VHS Beyond, the latest installment of the VHS series that dates back to, I think, 2012 with the first VHS movie. And then the resurgence of the VHS franchise came about when I believe it was Bloody Disgusting and Shudder kind of got together, or something. Like Bloody Disgusting has been producing them the last 4 entries, which have included, I always stumble like with the order of them, but it was VHS.
It's 94, 99, 85, and then beyond.
There you go.
For the Shudder ones. That is.
Yes. And they've been releasing like yearly, like clockwork, and it has filled me with quite a bit of joy. So very much looking forward to chatting with you, Brent, about this movie, which is available on Shudder. It was released on October 4th, 2024. The premise, which is, it's a little dodgy here. 6 blood-curdling tapes unleash horror in a sci-fi-inspired hellscape, pushing the boundaries of fear and suspense. So we've got 5 segments and 1 frame segment. So what I figured we would do is do like an overview of the entire movie itself, kind of in a non-spoiler thing, and then I can play a clip from the trailer, and then we can go into a more spoiler dissection of each segment, and then call it a night. So
Sure.
That works? Perfect.
Yeah, works, absolutely.
Nice. So we are going to go ahead and give an overview of VHS Beyond. Once again, it is streaming on Shudder. Brent, you've been on to talk about VHS movies the last is this the 3rd or 4th year that you've been on for VHS movies?
This is the 3rd,
The 3rd, yes.
Yeah, we talked about 99 and 85. Yeah.
Yes. So to kind of recount for the audience, like, how did you feel about those installments, and what were your expectations going into VHS Beyond?
I think I prefer 99 to 85. I thought both were pretty good, but yeah, I would say I prefer 99. I think part of it too, and I think that's what these movies are kind of going for in some cases, is like that was like when I was actually more of a preteen technically, but like that era, like I was around then and that sort of thing. So I kind of recognized some of the zeitgeisty, sort of like cultural things that they were tying in with that. Whereas 85, like, yeah, I recognize those things, but it's like not exactly the same. So yeah, I probably prefer 99 a little bit. Yeah, really liked Ozzy's Dungeon.
Yes. Revisiting that when I was rewatching them, Ozzy's Dungeon was awesome.
That's still like my favorite of probably those 2. And honestly, even adding Beyond into it, it's probably just one of my favorite VHS segments. I just really think it's a wonderful sort of send up of Nickelodeon game shows and just going really in pretty demented directions. So yeah, I still love that one. But yeah, there's plenty of good ones overall. It's a fun series. I'm glad that they since VHS 94, they're kind of doing it yearly. It's a fun just like annual Halloween sort of tradition. And obviously, if you have Shudder, you're probably into horror movies. So
right.
I like that they've kept that going for 4 years strong. So
yeah, same here. It's been a blast, especially since Bloody Disgusting kind of took the reins. It has been consistently like good quality installments the last few years. With anthology movies like this, it is going to be a mixed bag most of the time. Like, as just by definition, that's what an anthology movie basically is.
Sure,
going to be a mixed bag. But what I really like about it is just obviously the concept. Like, it is a showcase of often eclectic voices in film, and being able to have people put their stamp on something without it being too industrialized or too much like just like a churning something out. Like, it feels like each installment is very much in keeping with the filmmaker's vision. So I really like that. And that's something that feels good 7 installments into a franchise like this. I think that's a good feather in its cap. Yeah. So, and as far as a rundown of the last few entries, I really liked. I don't know if I would say that they've been escalating in quality each time, but like VHS 94, that had some issues that I had, was like the digital artifact of the VHS kind of like look was a little bit hard to get past, because it just seemed a little too much like they were trying to do something. It seemed very cheap. Mm-hmm. But there was some really cool stuff in there. I remember, I think Storm Drain was a really good one. And then The Empty Wake was good.
It's Storm Drain, which takes place in Westerville, Ohio, which is where my parents live.
Oh,
it's a
nice.
suburb of Columbus.
Nice.
I think Chloe Okuno, I believe is her name. She directed Watcher, a couple of years after that, or maybe only 1 year. Anyway, so I don't know if she's from Ohio, but there's all these Ohio allusions in that Storm Drain segment from '94.
Nice.
But like they mention multiple times it takes place in Westerville. There's like, someone mentions Athens, Ohio, which is Ohio University, which is where I went to school.
Oh, wow.
So there's like, it's just funny. There's like all these, and I have no idea why it takes place there. I can't imagine there's storm drains in Westerville with rat men in them. But who knows?
That's wild. I love that. That's awesome. That's very awesome. Yeah. And then 99, I think I may have liked that a bit more. Like, even when you have these kind of, I don't know if I would say high concept installments or anything, but like Ozzy's Dungeon we talked about was really cool. The Gawkers was a fun kind of nod to that like late 90s kind of raunchy sex comedy,
like horny
thing.
Teenager, right? Yeah. Uh-huh.
But like its own like spin on it. And I also really liked Suicide Bid in that one. I thought that was a really, really good claustrophobic thriller. And then finally, 85 I thought was solid as a throwback to kind of 80s slashers and horror movies like that. But I came out of VHS 85, the rewatch of it, just recommitted in my belief that I wish Dreamkill would have been its own like feature length movie. Because I think that was just far and away the best segment of that installment.
And I think 85 is where they had two that like kind of connected with each other, not a wraparound, but they had the one with the lake, and then it was like the kind of cult thing later. I wish they had just I think I said this in the review that we did. I wish they had taken those two and like put them together and did like a feature, because it's like, it's really good. I think both of the segments are good, but it's like, I don't know. I think they could have done some really cool things with like combining those, and then I don't know. But
yeah, I liked the resolution of that. But I do agree. Yeah, it definitely, it was Ambrosia and No Wake. The two. Yeah. Yeah. I like that as kind of like exploring similar things between two sides of a similar story. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And then other ones in that one just didn't really do it for me. But I was very excited when they announced that the 2024 installment of VHS was going to be VHS Beyond, which is by its own like definition and everything, it is a it is more in keeping with sci-fi horror, and that's kind of like the overarching theme of the whole thing. It's science fiction horror, which is something I'm definitely a fan of and was definitely interested in seeing. So, having gone through that preamble and everything, Brent, what did you think of VHS Beyond overall? And then we can go segment by segment.
Yeah, I liked it. I think it's probably for me an improvement over 85. I think overall, like I enjoyed just the overall quality. I think I liked a little bit more. I think it's probably like a similar level of enjoyment to like 99 or probably even maybe not 94. 94 I really liked a lot. Anyway, so nice. Like it, again, like you said, it's like mixed bag, so it's kind of hard to. It would be easier for me to rank the segments that I like as opposed to the overall movies that I like.
Yeah.
But regardless, yeah, I think it's another strong entry. We'll talk about the individual segments. My favorite was the Fur Babies one, which is Justin Long co-directed this one, and there's a lot of overlap with Tusk, the movie he did with Kevin Smith.
I had that thought too. Yeah, very much so.
Oddly enough, it was my favorite because I just thought like the acting was good, the concept was fun too, and just like it just had some neat creature effects and all sorts of stuff. But oddly enough, I thought like that one was actually the least thematically tied to the rest of them, because the rest of them, I think, it's not only sci-fi but actually like extraterrestrials. I think with all the other ones, and Fur Babies. Sorry if this is like a spoiler, but that one doesn't involve extraterrestrials. You could say it's it's sci-fi, maybe. Yeah, I think of it more of just kind of like
body horror,
slash like really dark comedy. But so it was sort of different, but what I suspect probably happened because Justin Long is, he's a well-known entity. I wonder if he was developing this because I think he wrote it too, or co-wrote it with someone else. They might have just like had it like already or something, and like they were like, well, we'll just put it in there. Like, I don't know. And again, like I think it really works. Like it works on its own anyway. Yeah. But I wonder if that's kind of why it didn't match with the extraterrestrial stuff. But
that's interesting. I didn't really think it didn't stick out to me as something that was straying from the overall concept. Like I didn't have that feeling, but kind of retroactively, now that you brought that to my attention, I kind of do. I kind of do see that it is kind of a slightly like. Not a full like square peg in a round hole situation, but it's like just not fully a circle going into the circle peg or whatever. But yeah, I would say that in Dream Girl also technically doesn't really, my memory of it at least doesn't really have much in terms of not extraterrestrial stuff, but I mean, it's still in
that's more of a
sci-fi.
robot, I guess. You're right. I actually didn't know. Well, I didn't know if it was a robot or an alien or a creature. I didn't exactly know, but anyway, we'll talk about that again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Overall, for me, I enjoyed this installment quite a bit. There was nothing that blew me away like Dreamkill did in last year's installment. And there wasn't anything quite as fun to me as Ozzy's Dungeon. But it still is a pretty solid, very solid display of mostly sci-fi horror. And I was very excited about Kate Siegel's segment, which we'll talk about, Stowaway, especially it also being written by Mike Flanagan, who I'm a huge fan of. So, we'll talk about those segments and everything. But overall, I thought it was a very solid entry. The frame story will, like we've said, we'll talk about it, but the frame story didn't grab me as well as it could have. But overall, I thought it was pretty solid. Do you want to go segment by segment in a slightly spoiler fashion?
Yeah.
All right, nice, cool. Before we do that, what did you rate it on Letterboxd?
I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I think it's the same I gave
Nice.
99. So I'd say that kind of on par with that, even though I didn't like anything in this quite as much as like Ozzy's Dungeon. I think that like I think the overall like this is a pretty consistent batch, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I rated it 3.5 stars. It's another in a solid grouping of movies that I'll revisit each year that I get a chance to. So those are our non-spoiler thoughts for VHS Beyond on Shudder. I'm going to go ahead and play a clip from the trailer. When we come back, we're going to be spoiling each segment in VHS Beyond.
Everything that we thought we knew is called into question. Maybe we're not alone. Maybe our company does not wish us well.
All right, so I forgot where I ended it. So Brent, we're going to go ahead and go segment by segment and in a spoilery fashion. Let's get started with the framing story, Abduction/Adduction, directed by Jay Cheel and written by a person by the...
You sure it wasn't written by an alien?
It probably was. Oh, written and directed by Jay Cheel. So yeah, like I said, I wasn't terribly impressed with it. I liked the overall aesthetic of it. This kind of documentary style extraterrestrial thing. It's a nice like throwback to like those kind of documentaries that I remember watching as a kid, like thinking like, oh, this is all like real stuff. Like it was solid, but by the time we get to the kind of end of it, the end of the frame narrative, I wasn't really that engaged by it. How'd you feel about Abduction/Adduction?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was all right. It reminded me sort of in the Talking Head documentary setups, like maybe like the Hell House movies, if you've seen those. So like kind of like they usually at the beginning of those movies, they'll have those like kind of Talking Head bits to make it seem like it's a real thing that happened, of course. Yeah. And then like kind of like Paranormal Activity, I got a little bit. So it kind of reminded me of like a combination of those sort of two things. I was interested in it in the little breadcrumbs they were dropping, but the ending was not satisfying for me. So I guess that kind of screws things up. But but I think the framework fit in terms of like the setting up for the whole like extraterrestrial, like you said, like kind of not like unsolved mysteries, but like I don't know, beyond belief or something like that. Yeah. You know, like something like that where it's like anyway. So I liked it more for just the table setting as opposed to because I don't think it resolved especially in a way that was like it was kind of just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, my big issue with it, I think that the actual resolution of it had some good like visual effects to it and had some interesting like ideas. But I think that like throughout the movie, there are in between each segment, there's interludes of this segment, and it's like getting more and more background and building up toward that finale. And I feel like those interludes just weren't. Those interludes are the things that I wasn't into. Like it felt like that was kind of a chore, just to get to the next segment. And I don't know. It felt like if we didn't have those interludes, or I would go so far as to say if we didn't have those interludes, and then the epilogue, the end segment, I think it would have worked a little better for me if we didn't have like an overarching story to kind of follow in between segments. So
I can say that it's not the worst frame story because I have seen VHS Viral now.
Oh God, yes. I'm scared to revisit that one. Yeah.
You know, I actually didn't think it was that bad overall. Like the segments. I thought the parallel universe one was probably my favorite of those, where the guy kind of steps through and he has like 15 minutes and switches with a guy.
Yeah.
And the world he steps into is very different. Anyway, I thought the segments weren't actually that bad. They cut one apparently that didn't make it for some reason, and I have to go and find that one because it's kind of seems weird. I don't know exactly why they did. But regardless, the frame narrative is very bad and very hard to follow. Like I did not know what was happening in most of the segments. It introduces all these characters that I understand. It's like like the frame narratives I think work when you just add a little more, and it seemed like every single segment was like a totally different thing. Yeah, it just was not good. And by the ending I was like, okay, well, I have no idea what any of that meant. Right. So that's definitely the worst one they've done. So I think everyone they've done since then is definitely not as bad as that one.
Oh, absolutely. And the parallel universe one segment in that one, just to mention that was directed by Nacho Vigalondo. And I remember that was like the one like thing that I latched onto, was like that was a really good one.
Yeah, he did the Puka episodes, if I recall, for Into the Dark, I believe.
Oh, nice.
He did 2 of those, and then what was that one with Anne Hathaway? He did. It's the first movie Neon distributed, actually. Colossal, I believe it's called.
Oh, okay.
That was a really interesting. It didn't work for me anyway, but interesting. Romantic drama / kaiju movie.
Okay. I did not see that one. Interesting.
Yeah, it didn't really quite work for me, but I'm pretty sure he directed that one too. So anyway, he's down the guy. So yeah, that's my favorite in viral. But yeah, I mean, I get why it's people. I get why they had to like reboot it after that and and everything. And it's good they did, because again, I mean, I think it really works on this format and Shudder and annual releases like we talked about. So.
Oh, absolutely. And so aside from the frame narrative, the first segment is Stork, directed by Jordan Downey and written by Jordan Downey and Kevin Stewart. This was pretty wild. It was something. It follows like this SWAT unit that's they're a police unit dubbed Warden. They kind of take the kind of aesthetic of like kind of a vigilante group, but with badges. After a string of like infants are taken, and like the reveal of the Stork was where I was like up until that point I was like, okay, this is standard found footage, like first person shooter porn, basically, for video game fans. And like, I was like, that's fine. It's cool. It's fun. But then when we get the visual of the Stork and it clicks together, and I was just like, that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. Yeah. And it really kind of, really just jumped out to me as it's such a fun twist on like introducing us to a kind of standard sci-fi horror thing, like a zombie sort of violence porn, basically, and then switch it around to the Stork element was just wild. So what did you think of Stork?
Yeah, I mean, it reminded me of sort of like the beginning, or the frame story for like 94, which is like this SWAT team going in, and it's like, it turns out like, oh, it's this cult that like trapped them and all stuff. So like, I kind of watching it, I was towards the like beginning and middle, I was kind of like, A, I feel like I've kind of seen this before, and B, like, I'm just like, okay, well, what does this have to do with anything? But then, yeah, towards that like end segment, once you get the actual like creatures and stuff, you're like, oh, they're like alien hunters. Like, it reminded me of like, if Men in Black were like militiamen or something, you know, or it's just like this thing, I don't know. It was like this, like you said, like more vigilante justice for these like alien creatures. So yeah, so it took me, I mean, it was watchable certainly up until that point, but I was just kind of like, okay, like, you know, whatever. But then that's when I think towards that like second half, or even like the ending, especially, it kind of clicked in for me. So yeah, I dug it.
Nice. Yeah. A good strong like opening segment, for sure. And we kind of needed that, or at least I needed that, because Dream Girl if there's like one dud in the movie for me, I would say it's Dreamgirl, directed by Virat Pal and written by Virat Pal and Evan Dixon. I appreciate it for the way that it utilizes the found footage element. Like their paparazzi, it's in India. It's kind of following this Bollywood sensation. And then weird stuff happens with that, and it didn't really land with me. How did you feel about Dreamgirl?
Yeah, I liked most of the kind of place setting for this. The fact that it's again, as you mentioned, it's like paparazzi in the what I would just like Bollywood paparazzi. Like that's probably an insane world. Like I like that part of it, that it's a different. And I mean, we get this with like some of the segments that Timo. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his last name off the top of my head, but from '94, and I think he did one in '85. I think anyway, really talented action director, but that it's like kind of he did the one in VHS 2 as well, the really good one with the creepy cult thing. Anyway,
oh yeah, okay.
So he did that one, and then he did the Machine one in '94, where it's it's like the person's like on the. It's like this mad scientist, and he has like a human head on like this, but so he did that one
the
too,
creature thing.
Which I'm not remembering any of the names of these, but he did those two. So anyway, all that to say that like I like when they can bring kind of different, just again like parts of the world, like the fact that it's like in different language and this sort of thing and different sort of thing. I really like that they. I think she's shooting a music video. I don't know. I couldn't tell if it was a music video or a movie.
I couldn't tell. I feel
either
like
way,
maybe
it's
music
so
video.
Bollywood.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%.
I liked that sort of send up because I'm like, you could like this, and I feel like it had good production value because I mean, I was like, this looks like about what that would seem like.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
and there's some good violence in it. That's pretty cool, but it just it didn't grab me as well as I would have liked it to.
With the short films, sometimes you just kind of have to blow past like the they don't have time for exposition and stuff. But I was kind of like, okay, once you get there, and it's like, okay, she's again, I don't know if she's a robot alien thing or something because she was spitting up acid, and maybe she's a robot. I don't know. Anyway, I was like, okay, so like who's controlling her?
Yeah,
I don't really understand that, or meaning like. She can just rip everyone to pieces if she wants to. Like, what has stopped her before this? I don't.
Yeah.
And so that's whatever. And then like I feel like some of the effects were cool, but I also felt like I couldn't really tell what was going on. And that's just the way that she cuts a lot of the lights and stuff. So I was more taken with the first part of it than the second. But so yeah. I thought it was all right. Yeah,
it was fine. It's one that I think when I revisit it, it'll be one where this is a backhanded compliment. I feel like I'll probably, when I rewatch it, I'll probably think like, oh, that was actually pretty cool. I'm glad I didn't remember anything from it when I started rewatching this movie. And
that's a good point too. I mean, just to tangent for a second, like about these movies, like that's what's been fun. Like we have rewatched. Well, let's see. Well, 3 of them, and then we watched Viral. So we rewatched the first 2. We hadn't seen Viral, so we watched that one, and then we watched 94 because I realized I hadn't logged it, but I knew we watched it. Yeah, but I just like hadn't put concrete thoughts down. Not that anything I put on Letterboxd or concrete thoughts, but anyway, I just wanted to like firm all that up. So basically, the first 4 we either rewatched or watched for the first time, and that's something I like about these movies, like VHS. The very first one, I don't think we had seen that in probably about when it came out. So I mean, it's probably over 10 years ago ish. And then even 2 has probably been, around that amount of time, 9 or 10 years since we had seen it. So these are fun ones to sort of rewatch, and in a way, it's kind of the grab bag element is kind of nice because you can sort of just be like, you can sort of zip through it if you want to, if you're like, oh, I didn't like this one, or if you're looking for one or something. Right. So I kind of like that sort of bag of candy. You pick around the wood if we're going with the trick or treat analogy here.
Like you'll get raisins and candy corn here and there, but sometimes you get like really good like Kit Kat bars,
the A+, Reese's or whatever,
More often than not, really. Like none of these movies in the franchise so far, none of them are total 100% duds. Like there's at least one segment in each one. Like VHS Viral. That one, the parallel universe one, is fantastic. So much so that like when I think about that, I forget that it's in VHS Viral. Like I just think it's in another one that's a better installment. But yeah, it's
the magic one is kind of weird. Anyway, we don't need to get talking about Viral.
Oh yeah.
The cloak.
Jesus. But that's Dream Girl. The next segment is a pretty awesome one in my opinion. And I think it's the one that kind of has gotten some good reactions. It's Live and Let Dive, directed by Justin Martinez and written by Ben Turner and Justin Martinez. It is about a group of friends who are about to jump doing skydiving stuff. And then, right before they jump, aliens invade. And man, I thought that was really interesting. That's such a fun concept. It maybe doesn't follow it through quite as well. Like it's a stronger concept in a slightly not as strong execution, but it's probably the most fun of this entire movie. So what did you think of Live and Let Dive?
Yeah, this is another one I really liked the first half a whole lot. Like, in fact, it was, for most of it, I was like, this is probably going to be my favorite, like, overall. Nice. I really liked when they were, like, on the plane, like, the idea of, like, especially, like, the POV sort of stuff, I thought really worked well. Like, I was like, I mean, I would never skydive. I never have skydived.
Oh, yeah.
Probably
no,
never
me
will.
neither.
But I was like, it really had that feeling of like, I don't know, the effects I thought were really good. Like I'm not always the best judge of that, but like, looking out the plane when they see the ships and stuff. And then when they do dive out and everything, I'm like, this looks good. I mean, and especially coming off of seeing like, like Viral, especially, like there's some really shoddy effects in that one. So again, to see that sort of upgrade, I'm like, well, it really worked. I think just when they're on the ground, I didn't like the Orange Grove stuff quite as well, but that was still pretty good. And again, the effects work was still good there. I knew they weren't going to stay on the plane forever, so it is what it is. Yeah. But I felt like nervous and really in it when they were, before they were about to dive. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the effects work is great in this and solid throughout. But yeah, once, like, I agree with you. Once they kind of get on the ground, it kind of seems like it loses a little bit of its kind of quality, like its shock value, I guess, in terms of like it is so born out of this kind of big concept of like, oh, what if aliens while skydiving? Like that's a really cool concept. And then once it gets on the ground, it's like, okay, what if every alien invasion movie we've seen, basically?
Right.
So it loses a little bit of luster there. So yeah, but still solid overall and a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then the next one, as you mentioned, it is directed and written by Christian Long and Justin Long. It's called Fur Babies. This is honestly a close second for my least favorite. I wasn't that impressed with it. I think specifically because of the similarities to Tusk, which Tusk is a movie I didn't like. I was
gonna say, you really hate Tusk, right?
Yeah, it was such a weird, like, if I can go on a quick Tusk tangent, I love the idea of it, and I love that it was born from Kevin Smith's podcast. Like something like they just ran with it. They got like an email or something, or they saw like an ad, and then they just riffed about it, and basically Tusk was born from there. That's really cool. The movie it felt like it felt more like he was excited to make a movie of the riff that he did on the podcast, and then it didn't work for me. Also, I hated the depiction of like, podcasters as shock jocks. Like, fuck off.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I still hold like just annoyed feelings at that. But anyway.
See, that's how I feel about yoga hosers.
Oh, see, I
you didn't go down that far.
So far away from yoga hosers. Like, I'm
telling you, it's worse than Tusk, and I actually don't mind Tusk, but I'm telling you, yoga hosers is worse.
I 100% believe you. I'm fine with just having that belief and not challenging it by saying it.
Right. Yeah.
But fur babies, that is the struggle I had with fur babies, because it's a good concept, but it's also a concept that's been explored poorly, in my opinion, with this same, like Justin Long was in Tusk, and it just feels weird that he would, make something that's so close to it. And I don't know. It's weird. It's like he's punching up on something that he made 10 years ago.
It is strange. Like, I would love to, I haven't seen any interviews or whatever, but like, there's obviously some connection there.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is, and why he would go back to something he'd kind of already done. And I agree, this is like similar. I don't know. I think it's maybe because I like Tusk, but this is like I will totally agree. Like, this is a lot of similar stuff that they're doing in terms of like the, body modification and like, trapping them and that sort of stuff. But of course, like the aesthetic here is very different because it's VHS and all that stuff.
And like it, to be fair, it doesn't go the same places that Tusk does. It's similar in like on paper. So I don't.
Well, if this had come before Tusk, I think that's the other thing too. Like, if this had been before that, I don't know. But then, I know it wouldn't be that way because of the way that it came about from the podcast. But I liked it. I think I liked the acting too. I thought that the woman who runs the supposed doggy daycare, the actress's name is Libby Letlow, I believe, and she did. I mean, she's kind of in like, I guess, the Michael Parks role, sort of from Tusk, even though that's a very different character because he's like this eccentric millionaire or whatever old guy.
Sure.
She's this very like, it's creepy to me because I have, having a dog. Like I've seen those sort of folks, and it's sort of creepy where it's like you almost sort of recognize it more, for people or whatever. So even dropping up my dog to get groomed today, it's like, I'm generalizing, but you run into those kind of kindly, women. It's really creepy that you could be kidnapped and turned into a dog slowly by them. So I think honestly her performance is like kind of what made it like stand out for me and work for me so well. I think if it had been, I don't know, if it had been Justin Long in that character or something, or I don't know what, like, I don't think it would have worked nearly as well. I think that was like, that was one of the main reasons. But I would not argue with anyone that was, honestly, now that I think of it, I don't know. I might have liked Live and Let Die a little more than this. I don't know. I think they're both good. I liked Live and Let Die and Fur Babies. So yeah.
That's fair. And I think that there's a lot of fun to be had with Fur Babies and the way that the places that it goes in a kind of demented way. But it just kind of was a little bit of a dud to me.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And to round out this review, do we want to talk about Stowaway, directed by Kate Siegel and written by Mike Flanagan? This is a story about a woman who is kind of documenting possible UFO activity in the desert and becomes a passenger on a ship. How did you feel about Stowaway?
This is the part in the episode where there's just a pit in my stomach and I just feel low. I couldn't really get behind this one.
Interesting.
So I was really excited, as you were. I know you're a bigger Mike Flanagan fan even than I am, and Kate Siegel's directing this. He wrote it and everything, and I'm like, all right, this is so cool. And regardless of how I felt about this one, I'm glad that they're able to do this and attract this kind of talent and star power and everything to do these sort of anthology films. For me, honestly, a lot of it was just, I don't think the effects were necessarily bad. I just thought it was really like murky and really hard to see. And then also, I couldn't quite tell what was going on once she was on the ship. That's like, that was one of the things, like, they're like healing her, I think. That's the these like nanobots or whatever are healing her. But then, like, I couldn't quite tell like what else was happening. There was like tension, but I couldn't really tell. So maybe that's my fault. And maybe once I figure out what's going on, I'd like it more.
Yeah, I will 100% agree with you there. Honestly, as much as I wanted to love this segment and wanted this to be like a strong finisher, especially with me being a fan of the filmmakers behind it, I will agree. I wasn't as blown away as I was hoping and expected to be. And I think most of that is due to the lead up to her going onto the ship or being in the ship or what have you. The lead up to that just felt a little bit too dry. Like it felt like it was a little bit of a slow build toward that. And once she got on the ship, I agree with you. Like it was a little bit hard to see in terms of visual effects, and there, like you said, the murkiness of it was pretty evident. Because I feel like there are elements of it where she's like the healing substance, the nanobites or whatever, are transforming her in a way that's like supposed to be like a body horror thing, but I feel like it wasn't as clearly depicted, which could be fine if like multiple segments in this movie didn't already do like some pretty cool like body horror modification things. But having said that, the actual like jump to light speed, that like the stowaway aspect of it, I thought was a pretty big swing in terms of the visual effects, and I think it worked pretty well for me. I thought it was a good like kind of cerebral sort of depiction of it. I thought it was cool.
Yeah. I definitely wanted to get there. I was the most excited about this one, and it's just kind of disappointing, but these things happen. Yep.
I am interested in seeing what Kate Siegel does behind the camera again. And I think that team of her and Mike Flanagan, I would like to see them do another VHS segment at some point in the future. So,
I rewatched Hush.
Oh, nice.
Last month, whenever it became, they like re-released it because it was on Netflix for a while and then just disappeared and you weren't even found it anywhere, and it had been a while since we've seen it, so we rewatched it. And when I was thinking about Stowaway, I was thinking about that because of course that was her in front of the camera, him behind, and all that. So it would be cool to see them do. I don't know if they'll do another like VHS segment, but something else. He has his hands in all sorts of stuff, so wouldn't surprise me if he does do I don't know what, Dark Tower or some kind of series or something if she does more directing that way. So
that would be great. Yeah, I just the Dark Tower, it needs to happen. I'm so excited.
Sending you off with good vibes.
Yes, exactly. Really quick, it's kind of funny. I'm looking at the Wikipedia page and in the production side. It says that I don't know what the source is from Collider. Kate Siegel initially planned to do a segment that would have been a musical. After this was shot down, she suggested a short involving the Muppets and even wanted to get Brian Henson involved, but this idea was turned down too. She eventually spoke with Mike Flanagan and settled on the final version seen in the film. I think this was a great segment in that context.
I think a musical, you're not going to do it a VH. I'm sorry. Yeah. Those are ambitious ideas.
Yeah. That would be like making a Joker movie a musical.
They're never going to do that.
No. But overall, I thought this was a pretty solid entry in the franchise. And again, I'm just so happy that we have this, that this is the current yearly tradition for horror fans. And I will watch every installment that they put out, and I will force you to be on the podcast with me to talk about them.
So fine by me. Just don't turn me into a dog.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Don't pigeonhole me, please.
Make it a cute one. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, I think that should just about do it for this episode of The Obsessive Viewer. Brent, before we go, obviously we're going to forego potpourri, but do you want to tell people where they can find you once again and what you have coming down the pike or pipe or whatever?
awakeinthedark.com is the best place to find me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, all of it. I have reviews for Woman of the Hour, which is going to be on Netflix this Friday. That's already out. I have a couple pieces on Midwest Film Journal, one that came out last week, and then one that by the time you're listening will probably already be out. So those are my entries for Guillermo del Toro retrospective and No Sleep October. So
nice.
Yeah, and then probably be doing Spinal 2 next week, I would imagine.
Nice. Awesome. I almost said well done. Like, good job.
I did it.
Yeah.
I brought the smile back.
Yes. Well, it's always a smile to have you on here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that'll do it for this episode of the Obsessive Viewer Podcast. Thanks again to Mitch for joining us for our Joker Folie review. Once again, check out Heartland. It's currently going here in Indianapolis and virtually. Check all of that out. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and make sure to follow the show on social media and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast app. Also, check out Obsessive Viewer Podcast's other shows, Tower Junkies, a Stephen King podcast hosted by Tiny and myself, and Anthology, the Twilight Zone and classic sci-fi podcast hosted by me. And next time on the show, I might do an extended potpourri, or we'll do Woman of the Hour and Saturday Night. That might actually be coming out this week because I'm trying to play catch up, so we'll see. But we'll see what happens. Until then, thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Brent, for joining me. And we'll see you next time on the Obsessive Viewer Podcast. And now, enjoy this short clip from a recent Patreon-exclusive episode. For the full episode and more Patreon-exclusive content, sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. But like, when I have to go and they do like x-rays and stuff, I'm like, why is there not better technology for this? Like, why do you have to shove this thing like damn near down my throat and then make me pay you money, and then you spit on me and call me a whore? It's in a slut. It's weird.
It's all part of the process, man.
I might not be going to the dentist now that I think about it.
Don't go to strip mall dentist. Any dentist that's in the just says dentist.
Yes. So that's been weighing on my mind. I'm gonna pause real quick while I take a sip of my Mr. Pibb from Chipotle. So
hell yeah.
Clearly I care about my dental hygiene. But yeah, so it's been very painful. Like right now, there is pain in my cheek, and yeah.
I'm sorry, man. That really sucks.
It's okay.
I'm sorry to hear that, dude. That is the worst.
It's okay. At least that's the only bad thing that's happened to me this year.
That's pretty dark. That's pretty dark, Matt.
It is. Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer Podcast. This episode was produced and edited by me, Matt Hurt. If you have feedback, thoughts on our episodes, or just want to connect, you can email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. For more information on this show, including a full archive of our episodes and show notes, visit obsessiveviewer.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a follow on social media and subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. Also, consider rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible to help increase our visibility and grow our community. If you want to support the show and get early access to new episodes, as well as a steady stream of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. For information on more podcasts presented by ObsessiveViewer.com, visit ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts. Our theme song is A Little Mad Sometimes by As Good As It Gets. For more of their music, check them out on Spotify and at asgoodasitgetsmusic.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See this episode's show notes for our unique promo code to get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn when you sign up for a new account. Get your show on Apple and Spotify, get helpful stats and all the support you need to sound your very best.